Preface: Anaya Ross never expected her first shift into her wolf to end in blood. One impulsive act, one life taken, and everything she thought she knew unraveled. Her pack turned against her, whispers and scorn shadowing every step. Even her fated mate, Alpha Amos, rejected her without hesitation, casting her into the dungeons and leaving her to reckon with a life of isolation, fear, and unrelenting judgment. But fate is not so easily thwarted. On her 18th birthday, a second unforeseen chance presents itself. A new mate emerges, powerful, enigmatic, and dangerous. The Lycan King himself. Suddenly, Anaya finds herself caught between two worlds, two men, and the hidden forces that conspire to claim her power for darkness. As Anaya struggles to uncover the secrets of her strength, she realizes that survival is only the beginning. Every choice she makes carries consequence. Every bond, every heartbeat, is a thread in the delicate web of loyalty, desire, and destiny. With enemies lurking in the shadows and two men vying for her heart, Anaya must navigate a world of deception, magic, and raw power. Will she rise, claim her place, and forge a love born of choice and strength? Or will the darkness consume her, leaving her lost in the ashes of her own life? Chapter 1. Blood Awakening. The forest was alive in a way Anaya had never noticed before. Not in the gentle, comforting way of sunlight dancing on leaves, nor in the soft murmur of a creek hidden beneath moss-covered stones. No tonite. The forest was watching, judging, and whispering secrets only a wolf could hear. Anaya crouched behind a thick trunk, the bark biting into her palms, her chest heaving. Every nerve screamed at her to run, to vanish into the shadows like she had so many times before, but her feet felt rooted in the damp earth. The scent, the coppery tang of blood, clung to the air, and it wasn't hers. Her wolf stirred, unfamiliar, panicked, demanding release she hadn't yet learned to give. It had happened so suddenly. One moment she was trying to calm her racing heartbeat after training alone in the clearing, and the next pain, fear, instinct had taken over. Her claws had struck without thought, her teeth had bitten without hesitation, and now, the body of a fellow pack member lay sprawled across the mossy ground, lifeless eyes staring at the canopy as if accusing her. Her breath caught in her throat, sharp and ragged. The realization struck her like ice through her veins. She had killed someone. She pressed her hands to her face, trembling. The first shift, the transformation she had long feared, the change that had begun weeks ago in dreams and trembling glimpses of her wolf in the mirror, had erupted violently. Something deep inside her had snapped, and the wolf had surged forward, violent, uncontainable. And now the pack would hate her forever. She could already hear the whispers in the distance, even before any wolf had seen the body. Even before anyone could speak. Did you see what Anaya did? She's dangerous, unstable. The Alpha should have never let her stay. Anaya's stomach dropped. Alpha Amos, her fated mate, her childhood companion and once trusted friend, would never forgive this. He had always been the measure of her worth, the one who had trained her, teased her, challenged her. But tonight, she had failed under the weight of the wolf she could not yet control. And then came his voice. Anaya froze, even as her wolf's instincts screamed to flee. The timbre of it, rich, cold, and commanding, cut through the underbrush like steel. Anaya Ross. It was all she could do to meet his gaze, eyes wide, heart hammering. The pack had begun to circle silently, shadows flitting between trees, the low growls and snarls like distant thunder. Her mate, the one whose scent should have been a tether, a comfort, stepped from the shadows, his dark eyes fixed on her. Not with fury, not even with anger, but with an icy, deliberate detachment that shattered her. "You've killed," he said, voice tight, measured. "Do you understand what that means?" Anaya's lips trembled. I didn't." "You did." His eyes narrowed. "And for that, there is only one course." The ground beneath her seemed to vanish. Amos' words didn't just echo, they tore through her, unraveling the threads of her life. "You are rejected. You are no longer worthy of your place among us. Take her to the dungeons." Two pack members stepped forward, shadows taller than trees, eyes unreadable. Anaya's knees buckled, and she stumbled back, the chill of the forest pressing into her skin like judgment. Her wolf whined, a sound she had never heard before, an instinctive plea that trembled through her bones. She had nowhere to run. The pack members seized her arms, surprisingly strong, and dragged her toward the dungeons hidden beneath the oldest part of the pack's territory. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and old blood as they descended narrow stairs carved into rock. Anaya's wolf writhed within her, sensing the prison's walls like an unfamiliar cage. She felt every vibration of the cold floor, every echo of her shallow breaths, every heartbeat that threatened to betray her. In the shadows of the dungeon, she finally allowed herself to collapse, sliding down to sit on the hard stone. Her knees were scraped, palms raw, but she hardly noticed. Her mind spun. She had lost everything, her place in the pack, her future, her mate's trust. And worst of all, the part of herself she had never known, her wolf had betrayed her in the only way that truly mattered, by taking a life. Hours passed. The darkness seemed endless, the whispers of the pack above echoing in her ears. She thought of Amos, of the boy who had once laughed with her under moonlight, who had held her close when she was afraid of her own shadow. He had been her anchor, and now he had rejected her. The bond they shared, one she had never fully understood, had been severed by fear and instinct. Her wolf circled her mind like a tempest, whispering of power she didn't yet control, of instincts she couldn't yet name, of a future she could barely imagine. She shivered in the cold stone, aware that her heart and soul were fracturing, aware that the life she had known had ended. And yet, deep inside, something flickered. Something ancient, something that told her she was not done, not yet. And that was when the first echo came. A presence, somewhere in the forest, beyond the stone walls. Anaya felt it, a pull, a tether that was not Amos, strong, deliberate, and full of authority. It touched her soul in a way the rejected bond never could. A new scent, a new power. Her wolf stirred again, not with fear, but with curiosity. A glimmer of hope broke through the despair, igniting a pulse in her chest that felt like the first breath of life after drowning. Somewhere in the shadows, the Lichen King had begun to find her, and Anaya, though trembling and broken, felt her destiny stir. The dungeon was cold, the stone unforgiving, but Anaya knew, somewhere in the darkness, that the world outside had shifted forever. Her first step toward survival, and toward the second chance fate had carved for her, was about to begin. Chapter 2. The king's shadow. The forest beyond the dungeons was alive with moonlight, its silver beams slicing through the dense canopy, catching the edges of leaves and casting eerie patterns onto the forest floor. Anaya's senses, heightened by fear and wolf blood, drank in every sound: the snap of a twig, the rustle of small animals, the low hum of distant wolves. It was a world she had never fully noticed until the night her life shattered. The night her first shift had stolen everything she thought she knew about herself. She didn't know how long she had sat in the cold, stone cell, tracing invisible patterns on the rough walls, lost in thoughts of Amos's rejection, lost in the guilt that weighed heavier than chains. Then came the faint, almost imperceptible vibration through the earth, an approach so deliberate, so controlled, it was unmistakable to her wolf. A presence unlike any she had known pressed against her senses. Powerful, commanding, yet measured with restraint. A scent that was layered, intoxicating, impossible to ignore. Her pulse quickened. This was no pack member, this was someone far beyond. The heavy dungeon doors creaked, and a shadow fell across the threshold. Anaya's head snapped up, her amber eyes wide, her wolf growling low, warning her even as a strange pull tugged at her heart. The figure stepped forward, tall, regal, and impossibly solid. He moved with a predatory grace that both unsettled and fascinated her. Dark hair framed a face both sharp and noble, eyes that seemed to pierce into her very soul. He carried the aura of command, of authority that had been etched into his every movement by years of ruling and surviving. Yet beneath it, she sensed restraint, a deliberate, careful control, as though the world itself had trained him to hold back the full weight of his power until necessary. "Anaya Ross," he said, voice deep, resonant, and laced with something neither anger nor kindness, something in between. "I have been searching for you." Her wolf stirred, senses blazing, instincts screaming both caution and recognition. She had never felt this pull before, never known a presence so complete, so consuming. Yet her mind rebelled, refusing to accept it, clinging to fear, to the knowledge that her mate Amos had already abandoned her. I don't understand," Anaya whispered, her voice cracking. "Who are you?" He stepped closer, and she felt the ground shift beneath the weight of his presence, her heart thrumming faster with a mix of fear, curiosity, and an undeniable pull she could neither name nor resist. "I am Kale, king of the Lichens," he said simply, the words carrying the authority of someone who had seen kingdoms rise and fall, of someone who had conquered darkness both within and without. "And you are the mate I have been searching for." Her breath caught. Mate. The word should have stirred comfort, warmth, but all Anaya felt was disbelief, confusion, and the faint, almost painful tug at her wolf. You're not him," she said finally, shaking her head. Amos, the boy who had rejected her, who had turned from protector to executioner, occupied the name mate in her mind. I've been abandoned." Kale's gaze softened, but only slightly, as if acknowledging her pain while remaining steadfast in his purpose. "You were never abandoned. Fate does not reject its chosen. Amos, your first bond was not meant to guide you to your full strength. I am here because you are more than this moment, Anaya. More than fear, more than chains, more than guilt. You have a power inside you, and it is time to awaken it." The words struck her like fire through ice. Power. Inside her? She had never felt strong, never felt capable, never felt deserving of attention, much less the notice of a king. Yet the pull persisted, subtle but relentless, a vibration that resonated deep within her chest. "Why me?" she asked, almost trembling. "Why now?" Kale knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to her level, not as a threat, but as a guide. "Because the world around us shifts, Anaya. Darkness gathers in places you cannot see, forces that wish to use the unprepared as weapons. And you are destined to stand against them. But first, you must survive and you must learn. Her wolf, long dormant and confused, whimpered, circling inside her mind like a tethered shadow, stretching toward him, calling to him. Anaya realized with a jolt of fear and awe that this was no ordinary bond. This pull was unlike anything Amos had ever offered, neither possessive nor cruel, but powerful, encompassing, undeniable. Her amber eyes met his, and for a heartbeat, the dungeon walls fell away. There was no darkness, no chains, no whispers of hatred from her pack. There was only Kyle and the pulse of destiny wrapping around her like a second skin. What do I need to do? She asked, voice trembling with equal parts terror and curiosity. First, Kyle said, rising to his full height, shadow falling over her in waves of power and authority. You must accept that you are not what they told you. You are not a mistake. You are not weak, and you are not alone. The words felt like a lifeline, a rope thrown into a storm-tossed sea. Anaya's wolf growled, a sound of recognition and awakening, stretching and straining, as if it had known all along this moment was coming. And then, Kyle continued, his eyes flashing with something unspoken. You must learn to control what you are. The wolf that lives inside you is strong, Anaya. Stronger than anyone has dared to believe, and only when it is fully awakened will you survive what is coming. A shiver ran through her body, a mixture of fear and anticipation. She had spent 18 years believing she was powerless, believing she was abandoned, believing she had no place. And now, everything had changed. The world, the pack, even herself, it was shifting beneath her feet. Kyle extended his hand, not demanding, not commanding, but offering. Stand with me, Anaya. I will guide you. But you must choose. Power does not wait for the hesitant. Anaya hesitated, the weight of her past pressing on her chest. Amos's rejection, the pack's disdain, her own guilt, they clawed at her, threatening to drag her back into despair. But the pull of Kale, the subtle thread of destiny, the awakening of her wolf, was stronger. She took a breath, long and deliberate, and placed her trembling hand in his. For the first time in her life, Anaya felt the stirrings of hope, not the fragile, fleeting kind that comes and goes, but a force that demanded recognition. Her wolf growled, deep and resonant, and in that sound, Anaya heard a promise, survival, power, and a second chance at life that could not be stolen. Beyond the dungeon walls, the forest waited. The shadows moved. And in the silence, Anaya realized that her story, her true story, was only beginning. Chapter 3. Awakening the wolf, the first light of dawn seeped through the high, narrow windows of the training hall, painting the stone floor in muted gold. Anaya sat cross-legged, hands resting on her knees, breathing shallowly. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, a restless shadow brushing against her mind, stretching and twisting, like it had been waiting centuries for this moment. Kale watched silently, standing at the far end of the hall, his eyes calculating, piercing, yet patient. He did not rush her, he never did. Every movement, every breath, every heartbeat was part of a rhythm Anaya had yet to learn to follow. You feel it, don't you? Kale's voice broke the silence, smooth and commanding. The wolf inside. It has always been here, Anaya, waiting for you to acknowledge it. Anaya's gaze flicked to him, amber eyes wide with fear and awe. I don't know how, she admitted. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, fragile against the echoes of the hall. Every time I try, it's like something stops me, like it's not allowed. Kale stepped closer, the floorboards creaking beneath his weight. It is allowed, he said firmly. No one can dictate what you are, not Amos, not the pack, not the shadows that lurk in corners. You are more than their judgment. You are stronger than the fear that has held you. Anaya swallowed hard. His words stung with truth. Fear had defined her for 18 years. Fear of rejection. Fear of her own power. Fear of the world beyond the pack's narrow walls. But now, with Kyle's presence pressing into her like the gravity of the earth itself, she realized that fear was no longer enough to bind her. Kale knelt, tilting his head to study her, eyes sharp and unyielding. Close your eyes, he instructed. Listen, feel your wolf is a part of you, Anaya. It is not separate, it is not foreign. It is your strength, your voice, your weapon, and your shield. Let it guide you. Reluctantly, Anaya closed her eyes. The cold stone beneath her, the distant whisper of wind through the trees, the faint echo of distant wolves, everything faded as her attention tunneled inward. Her heartbeat synced with her breath, the stirrings in her chest pulsed louder. Her wolf flexed, nudging, prodding, testing boundaries. Do not fight it, Kyle's voice came again. Closer now, almost a whisper, almost a command. Do not resist. Let it rise, let it breathe. Let it claim its space within you. A shiver ran down Anaya's spine. She felt it, the first true awareness of her wolf, a ripple that moved through her veins, through her muscles, through her very bones. It was powerful, demanding, insistent. A voice without words, a presence without form. A force that had waited to be recognized. Her hands twitched, her claws elongating subtly, her fangs pressing at the edges of her gums. Panic flared. This was too much, too fast, too unknown. But Kyle's calm presence anchored her. His hand hovered near her shoulder, ready to intervene if she faltered, but he did not touch her. She had to claim this moment herself, and then the growl came. Not from her throat, not yet, but from the depths of her chest, vibrating through every fiber of her being. It was raw. It was wild. It was hers. Kyle's eyes flickered with approval. Good, he murmured. Let it out. Let the wolf speak. Let it show you who you are. Anaya's wolf pushed harder, breaking through the last vestiges of fear. Images, sensations, emotions, memories she had buried. Her parents the first time she shifted, the terror, the rejection, all surged together in a torrent. She staggered backward instinctively, catching herself on trembling legs, heart racing, body humming with raw power. You are stronger than you know, Kyle said, his tone now edged with something sharper, an intensity that made the air itself feel electrified. The wolf within you is not a curse. It is your liberation. And soon you will need every ounce of it. Anaya blinked, eyes wide, pulse hammering. For the first time she saw herself not as a victim, not as a rejected mate, not as a girl trapped in the shadows, but as a force. She was danger wrapped in flesh and fur, a weapon waiting to be wielded, a queen of her own fate waiting for the right moment. A sudden clang echoed from the far door, snapping her out of her reverie. Both Anaya and Kyle tensed. Footsteps multiple, deliberate, echoed down the corridor. They know, Kyle muttered, eyes narrowing. The rogues, they have discovered your awakening. Her stomach dropped. Rogues. The whispered stories of attacks on innocent packs of shadows moving in the night, of wolves falling to unseen predators, they were real, and now they were coming for her. Anaya felt fear claw at her once more, but it was different this time. It was tempered with power, with the knowledge that she had something they could not take, something no one could touch. Kale stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on her back, a grounding presence amidst the rising storm. You must move fast. Trust your wolf. Trust yourself. We cannot let them reach you unprepared. Her wolf growled again, fierce and protective, and in that sound Anaya found clarity. She would not be a victim again. She would not let fear dictate her life. She would fight. She would awaken fully, and she would survive. The footsteps grew louder. Shadows flickered against the walls. The day that had begun with the promise of guidance and awakening was about to descend into chaos. And Anaya, for the first time in her life, welcomed it. Chapter 4. The First Trial. The corridors of the Midnight Hall were alive with whispers. A low hum of anxiety threading through the stone walls. Anaya's wolf stirred beneath her skin, alert and vigilant. Sensing danger before her human eyes could perceive it. She moved silently beside Kale, each step measured. Each breath a tether to the power surging through her. This way, Kale murmured, guiding her toward the armory. You need weapons. Strength alone won't protect you from them. Anaya's fingers brushed against the cold metal of a blade. The sensation sent shivers down her spine. For years, she had lived on the outskirts, rejected, dismissed, powerless. Now, every weapon, every shield, every instinct was hers to command. Her wolf hummed in anticipation, eager, restless. Then the first roar split the morning air. Not human, not fully. It was guttural, violent, predatory. The rogues had breached the outer gates. Kayla's eyes narrowed. Stay close. Don't hesitate. Trust your wolf. Anaya's pulse quickened. Fear clawed at her chest, but she forced it down. She could feel the bond of power threading through her veins, tightening like a coil ready to spring. Her wolf growled low, a protective echo of her rising confidence. She tightened her grip on the sword, every muscle coiled. The first rogue appeared at the edge of the hall, sleek, dark, and unnervingly silent. Its eyes glowed faint amber in the dim light. Anaya stepped forward instinctively, wolf instincts guiding her every move. She swung the blade, a precise arc that caught the creature mid-leap. It hissed, staggering back, but it wasn't alone. A shadow shifted behind it. Another, and another. The rogues moved as if connected, flowing in a coordinated rhythm. Anaya realized with a jolt that they were hunting in tandem, their attacks deliberate and strategic. Focus on the nearest, Kale instructed, voice calm but urgent. Your wolf knows. Listen. Anaya exhaled sharply, letting her wolf take the lead. She moved with fluid precision, sidestepping, parrying, striking. The creatures lunged. But her body moved before her mind could register the threat. Every swing of her blade, every dodge, every calculated counter was powered by the pulsing, predatory energy of her wolf. One rogue lunged from above, claws aiming for her shoulders. Anaya ducked, rolling across the stone floor, and drove her blade upward, slicing through the creature's momentum. It shrieked, dissipating into smoke, a sign of the dark. Unnatural magic that animated them. Kale was a shadow beside her, a blur of efficiency and lethal skill. He moved to cover her flank, his presence both comforting and commanding. "Don't hold back," he said, eyes blazing. "Your wolf is stronger than they are." Anaya's chest heaved, adrenaline and power intertwining. Her wolf's presence surged, guiding her reflexes, sharpening her senses. She leapt, landing atop a fallen rogue, impaling it with a blade infused with her energy. The others hesitated, sensing the awakening predator in their midst. Then came the roar that chilled her blood. One of the rogues, larger, more sinister, eyes blazing like molten gold, stepped forward. It wasn't he attacking immediately. Instead, it circled, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Anaya's wolf growled deep in her chest, a low vibration of raw, untamed power. The creature was testing her, probing her limits. She tightened her grip, drawing in a deep breath that steadied her trembling hands. "You can do this," Kale whispered, barely audible over the chaos. "You are more than what you've been told. You are your wolf. You are unstoppable." The words were a spark. An fear transformed into a surge of determination. She advanced, every step synchronized with the rhythm of her wolf. Eyes locked on the creature. The hall seemed to fade around her, leaving only her wolf, and the shadowed adversary before her. The clash was instantaneous. She moved faster than thought, parried a swipe, countered with a strike that sent sparks flying. Her wolf roared in triumph, its power pulsing through every strike, every movement, every breath. Finally, with a swift, decisive motion, she struck true. The creature staggered, then dissolved into shadow, leaving silence in its wake. Anaya dropped to one knee, Dida chest heaving, blade clattering to the stone. Her wolf purred, a low vibration of satisfaction. Kale approached, his expression unreadable, then finally allowed a faint smile. "Good," he said simply. "This is only the beginning. But you've been past the first test. Your wolf, and you, are stronger than they realized." Anaya's hands trembled, not from exhaustion, but from realization. She had survived. She had fought. And for the first time, she felt a thread of true power and control, glimpse of what she could become. But the rogues had not finished. Somewhere in the shadows, their eyes glowed with malice and cunning. Anaya knew this trial was only the beginning. The true challenge, balancing the bond with her mates, mastering her wolf, and surviving the plots that lurked in every corner, was only just beginning. Her wolf growled softly, nuzzling her heart. And Anaya, finally embracing the fierce, untamed force within her, stood tall. She would not run. She would not hide. And she would not let anyone dictate her fate again. Chapter 5. Shadows in the Pack. The dawn broke over the midnight hall in pale streaks of silver, illuminating the lingering smoke from last night's skirmish. Anaya moved through the corridors, senses alert, her wolf humming beneath her skin like a living pulse. Every shadow, every echo of footsteps set her nerves on edge. The rogues had testified her, but surviving was only the beginning. Danger lurked where she least expected it. She entered the training grounds, the sunlight streaming through tall windows, catching the dust in golden rays. Kale was already there, sharpening a blade with meticulous precision, his gaze dark and unreadable. Anaya hesitated, then stepped closer. "They will be back," he said without looking up. "And next time, they won't be testing you, Ticknell be hunting." Anaya's lips pressed into a thin line. "I know," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Her wolf stirred, sensing the tension in the air, eager and restless. "But I won't fail." "Not again." Kale finally looked at her, eyes sharp, measuring. "Your wolf is stronger than any of them realize. And now, so is your presence. You can't hide anymore. Not from them, and not from him." Anaya's stomach twisted. She knew he meant Amos, her first mate, the alpha who had rejected her, who had cast her into the dungeons without a second thought. She clenched her fists, anger rising. But her wolfish growl warned her to remain still. Patience, it whispered. Observation first. Strike only when the moment demanded it. The hall door creaked, and Amos stepped in. His presence commanding attention without effort. Every movement was precisely as controlled. Yet there was an unmistakable tension radiating off him, like a taut wire vibrating just beneath the surface. His eyes found hers immediately, and the air between them charged with a mixture of resentment, longing, and something neither was ready to name. Anaya, he said, voice low, careful, measured. We need to talk. Her wolf stiffened, for along her spine rising, instinctively protective. Anaya's heartbeat quickened. She had fought for her life last night, had begun to claim power she had never dared to imagine. And here he was, her rejected mate, stepping into her world again. I don't think we have anything to discuss, she said. Each word deliberate, cool. You made your choice. Amos's jaw tightened. I did what I thought I had to. But things are changing, and I can't ignore it anymore. Anaya's eyes narrowed. Her wolf surged, impatient. Sensing the pull of the bond they shared, a thread of power, undeniable and insistent, tugging at her core, she could feel it. A magnetic force drawing her closer despite every rational thought screaming to resist. Kale stepped beside her, subtly placing a hand near her shoulder, a silent reminder of the strength she had claimed last night. Don't you let him corner you, he murmured. You are stronger than this. Don't you let him dictate your next move. Amos took a careful step forward, stopping a few feet away. I don't expect forgiveness, he admitted, voice rough with barely restrained emotion. I only ask for a chance to make it right, to protect you, Anaya's wolf growled low, warning. But her human mind fought to maintain control. She had lived too long in shadows, too long under the weight of rejection and abuse. She had survived and begun to thrive. Could she trust him? Could she believe in his change? Was this just another cruel test of her resilience? Before she could respond, the air shimmered, a pulse of dark energy sweeping across the training grounds. Anaya instinctively crouched. Wolf instincts flaring. The rogues were not finished. Tikar were closer than anyone realized. Moving through the outskirts of the pack's territory, shadowing them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Kayla's voice broke through her focus. They're coming. Stay sharp. And Anaya, don't hold anything back, her wolf surged in response. An electric tension coursing through every fiber of her being. She felt power humming beneath her skin, raw and untamed. A force that demanded action. She glanced at Amos, measuring the weight of the bond they shared. The dangerous pull that threatened to overtake her control. Then the first shadow shifted, and the rogues emerged like specters, their eyes glinting with malice. Anaya tightened her grip on her blade, ready to defend herself, ready to unleash the full extent of her wolfish power. Amos moved beside her, tension coiled in his muscles. Every motion controlled, deliberate. Kale was a silent storm at her other side. And in that moment, standing on the edge of chaos, Anaya realized that this was the crucible test that would define who she truly was, and who she would become. The battle was about to begin, and nothing, not her fear, not her past, not the bond she had once rejected, would stop her from fighting. Chapter 6. The Awakening. The forest outside the midnight hall was alive with tension. Shadows twisting unnaturally under the silver moonlight. Anaya crouched low, her wolf rippling beneath her skin. Senses heightened, every nerve screaming that the rogues were closing in. Her breath came in sharp bursts, mist curling from her lips, but she didn't falter. This was her crucible, and she would not be consumed. Amos moved beside her. A controlled storm, every step precise. The tension in his gaze was almost tangible, a storm he struggled to contain. He was close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence, the thread of the bond thrumming between them, but distant enough to remind her that she could not yet trust him fully. "T've underestimated you," Kale murmured from the opposite side, eye scanning the tree line. "But tonight, Anaya." They TVL learn. Anaya's wolf surged, the pulse beneath her skin intensifying. It was no longer a whisper, a flicker of power, 'twas a roar, a force demanding release. She felt strength coiling through her limbs, sharper, faster, and deadly. And then, instinctively, she shifted, first subtle, her senses extending into the night. Feeling the pulse of the earth, the motion of every leaf, every creature in the forest. A shadow moved, to precise, to silent. And Aya lunged, her form shifting seamlessly, muscles rippling beneath fur as claws extended, senses burning with clarity. She struck before the rogue could react, sending him tumbling into the underbrush with a grunt of surprise. Amos's eyes widened. Not in fear, but in awe. The bond between them pulsed, a magnetic force tugging insistently at both of their core. He had always felt the pull, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. Anaya was no longer the scared, rejected mate. She was a force of nature, her wolf fully awakened, lethal and beautiful all at once. The rogues pressed. A coordinated wave of attacks, and Anaya met them with calculated ferocity. Every movement was precise, every strike controlled, yet infused with the raw power of her awakening wolf. She could feel Amos beside her, protective yet restrained. Matching her movements, his own power coiling like a spring ready to strike. "You're stronger than I thought," he muttered. Voice low, almost reverent. I underestimated you, Anaya, didn't he respond? Words were useless now, action spoke louder. Her wolf guided her, instincts honed, reflexes sharpened. She spun, leaped, and struck, each motion a deadly dance. The forest echoed with the sound of combat, clash of claws, the roar of wolves, the hiss of energy released into the night. And then, it happened, moment she had been unknowingly preparing for. A rogue lunged from behind. Faster than she could track, but Amos reacted instantly, intercepting the attack with a force that sent both combatants crashing to the ground. Anaya's wolf surged in response. Protective, instinctive, and the bond between them flared, a spark igniting into a wildfire. Amos's eyes met hers, wide and unguarded for a fleeting second. "Anaya, stay with me." Her heart skipped, pulse thundering. Yet she knew she had to trust herself, her wolf, and the bond that had once terrified her. With a low growl, she unleashed the full strength of her awakened wolf, a force of energy and ferocity that even the rogues could not withstand. They scattered, faltering under the power she wielded so effortlessly, unrestrained and pure. When the last rogue fell, the forest fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of the three standing survivors, Anaya, Amos, and Kale. Anaya's chest heaved, her claws retracted, settling back into a human form. Her eyes glowed faintly, remnants of her wolf's energy still thrumming within her. Amos stepped closer, cautious, his gaze never leaving hers. You are incredible," he said, voice tight with emotion. I didn't know you could be like this," Anaya's wolf growled softly beneath the surface. A warning and a challenge intertwined. "You still don't know me," she said, voice steady, eyes unwavering. "And until you do, don't assume you can control me, claim me again." Amos swallowed, tension in his jaw. But the faintest trace of a smile tugged at his lips. "I won't eat less," he whispered. "But I can't ignore this bond. I won't eat less. Not again." Anaya exhaled slowly, wolf instincts settling but not disappearing. She knew the fight wasn't over. Rogues would return, challenges would escalate, and the bond that tethered her to Amos would test her every limit. Yet, for the first time in her life, she felt a pulse of certainty. She was no longer the rejected mate, the shadowed girl who trembled in dungeons. She was awakening, powerful, aware, and dangerous. And Amos would have to meet her on her terms from now on. The forest seemed to pulse around them, alive with potential and peril alike. And Aya knew that the nights ahead would be filled with more battles, more tests of strength, trust, and heart. But as she glanced at Amos, a single thought crystallized in her mind. I am no longer afraid. Chapter 7. The bond tested. The morning sun filtered through the thick canopy above, scattering golden light across the midnight hall training grounds. Anaya stretched, muscles sore but alert. Her wolf still humming beneath the surface, a reminder of the night's awakening. The scent of damp earth and pine mingled with the faint musk of Amos's presence as he approached, every step deliberate, every movement measured. He stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, gaze locked on her. There was no pretense of authority today. Only intensity, a silent admission that the bond between them had shifted, pulsing, insistent. Anaya felt the tug immediately. A thread pulling, weaving into her very core, and she resisted, jaw tightening, refusing to let him claim her so easily. You pushed them back, Amos said finally, voice low, controlled. But you could have been hurt. Anaya met his gaze, her own eyes glowing faintly with the residual power of her wolf. I handled it, she replied, tone steady. I don't need protection from anyone, least of all from you. Amos's expression tightened, and she could feel the unspoken weight pressing down, guilt, the desire, the bond that refused to be ignored. It is not about me protecting you, he said carefully. It's about surviving. About ensuring the rogues don't find a weakness to exploit. She didn't respond, letting the silence stretch, testing him. Testing herself. Her wolf stirred, restless, sensing the tension that had always existed between them, but had never burned so brightly. Every instinct screamed that the bond was alive, demanding, relentless. Then we train, he said abruptly. Breaking the fragile tension. Together. Side by side. You need control, and I need to understand you. The bond. Everything, Anaya's brows lifted. Side by side? You mean under your scrutiny? Amos's jaw flexed. Under mutual scrutiny, this bond doesn't give either of us a choice about feeling, but it does give us a chance to learn. To survive. She studied him, weighing the truth in his words. Reluctantly, she nodded. Fine. But one wrong move. And I walk, agreed, he said, his voice carrying a quiet steel that mirrored her own resolve. The training began. Claws extended, muscles coiling, senses sharpened to a razor's edge. They moved in tandem, testing each other. Pushing boundaries, each strike a negotiation of power, trust, and restraint. The bond hummed between them. A living thread of energy that flared whenever they were too close, too intimate, too exposed. Anaya's wolf growled softly, sensing Amos's heartbeat against hers, a rhythm that was both foreign and essential. He adjusted, matching her movements. Neither dominant, neither yielding, yet every step, every swipe, every dodge carried unspoken dialogue. Words were unnecessary. The bond spoke louder. And then it happened. A sudden movement in the trelline, silent, almost imperceptible. Anaya froze, instincts flaring. Amos's eyes narrowed, and without a word, they shifted, blending seamlessly with the shadows. A rogue emerged, faster than expected, blade glinting in the morning sun. Anaya lunged, claws flashing, but Amos intercepted. His strength a perfect counterbalance. Their synergy surprised even them, a dance of precision, power, and instinct. When the rogue fell, gasping and retreating, Anaya and Amos stood side by side, chests heaving, eyes locked. The bond throbbed between them, insistent, undeniable, and for a fleeting moment, neither spoke. You're stronger than I imagined, Amos admitted finally, voice low, almost vulnerable. And Anaya's lips curved in a faint, wary smile. You're not so bad yourself, she countered. Tone teasing but edged with caution. But don't you mistake this for acceptance. I am still in control. Amos inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the challenge. I wouldn't dream of it. Not yet. The forest around them seemed to exhale, a living witness to their tentative truce, the bond pulsing, alive. Demanding more than either of them could yet comprehend. Rogue attacks would come, shadows would test their limits, and the bond would continue to stretch, pull, and shape them in ways they could not yet foresee. But for now, standing side by side, Anaya realized something she hadn't allowed herself to admit before. The bond was no longer a burden, it was a force. A force that could forge power, understanding, and perhaps, eventually, trust. And Amos would have to face her on her terms, every step of the way. The first test of their partnership had begun, and neither could predict where it would lead. Chapter 8. Shadows Encroaching. The night arrived with a chill that seeped into bones and whispered of danger. And Anaya's senses were sharp, heightened, every rustle of the trees, every shift in the wind, an alert. The rogue attacks had grown bolder, more coordinated, and the pack was restless. Whispers of betrayal threaded through the halls like smoke, and trust felt as fragile as the frost on the ground. Amos walked beside her, quiet, his presence both grounding and electric. The bond hummed faintly between them. A constant reminder of what neither could deny, yet neither could fully claim. Anaya felt the tug of it, sharp, insistent. And her wolf stirred beneath her skin, alert and restless. "You're thinking too far ahead," Amos said suddenly. Voice low but firm. "Focus on now. On what is in front of us." She shot him a glance, eyes narrowed. "And what if what is in front of us kills us?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowed his pace, matching hers with an almost imperceptible grace. "Then we survive. Together," Anaya's wolf growled softly. Sensing the truth in his words, but resenting the intimacy it implied. She didn't want to lean on him. Didn't want to be vulnerable, yet the bond had its own rules. It tugged, it demanded. It reminded her that survival wasn't solitary. The first rogue emerged from the shadow of the pines, silent, deliberate. A glint of metal catching the moonlight. Annie reacted instinctively, claws flashing, but Amos was already there. Intercepting with precision. Their movements were synchronized, a deadly choreography neither had practiced. Yet both executed flawlessly. The rogue fell, only to be replaced by another, then another. Shadows pressed in from all sides. And Anaya realized with a jolt that the attack was no random strike. Twitcher was a coordinated assault designed to test them. To exploit weaknesses, to draw them apart. Amos growled low, eye scanning, every muscle coiled. "Stay close. Don't separate." "Trust me," her wolf bristled, instinct screaming, yet a part of her obeyed. She slid beside him, and together they moved as one. A fluid, lethal entity. Every strike, every dodge, every narrow escape deepened the connection. Each pulse of the bond a reminder of the power simmering between them, and then came the unexpected, rogue-esque leader. Taller, faster, cloaked in black, emerging with a predatory grace that spoke of experience and malice. And Aya froze for a split second, heart hammering. Amos's presence anchored her, his wolf murmuring beside hers. And together they faced the new threat. The duel began. Steel clashed, claws flashed, shadows twisted. Amos protected her without smothering, letting her fight, letting her assert her strength. Even as the bond between them pulsed with urgency. Anaya realized in that instant that the bond wasn't just about survival. Twill was about power, shared and tested. Forged in fire. When the leader finally retreated, disappearing into the forest as suddenly as he had appeared. And Ace's chest heaved, muscles trembling with exertion. She turned to Amos, eye said, breath ragged. This is getting worse," she said, voice tight. Amos nodded, jaw clenched. "And it will keep getting worse. They're testing us, testing the bond, testing the pack. We can't afford hesitation." The forest seemed to close around them. Alive with unseen eyes and whispered threats. Anaya's wolf stirred again, restless, sensing danger that had yet to arrive. Yet for the first time, she didn't feel alone. The bond, insistent and demanding, was no longer a weight. Twit was a shield. A force that made her stronger, sharper, braver. Amos met her gaze, a silent question hanging between them. "Will you trust me?" And Aya's lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes reflected the answer. "I will survive," she said, voice steady. Though her heart raced. "And I'll do it my way," Amos nodded once, sharply. "Then we'll face them together." No half measures. The moon rose high, casting silver light across the treetops, and the shadows deepened, restless, encroaching. But Anaya and Amos stood, side by side, bound by a force neither fully understood, yet both could no longer ignore. The rogues would come again. They always did. But Anaya had a choice now, to fight, to embrace her power, and to claim the bond that had once been a source of fear, now a weapon. And for the first time, she felt the exhilarating, terrifying clarity of being unstoppable. Chapter 9. Echoes of betrayal. Dawn broke over the midnight Pakis territory. pale light brushing the treetops and spilling into the clearing where Anaya had spent the night recovering from the previous night's onslaught. Every muscle still throbbed with tension, every nerve sharpened by adrenaline, yet her mind refused rest. The bond hummed faintly. Persistent, a low, insistent pulse that reminded her that Amos was never far. That their fates were intertwined whether she wanted it or not. Amos had stayed near the perimeter. Eyes like molten steel scanning the forest for any sign of rogue movement. Even in sleep, he exuded vigilance. His presence a mix of danger and protection that made Anaya's chest tighten. She tried to push away the feeling. Tried to remind herself that she didn't need anyone. But the bond, strong, unyielding, insistent, made that impossible. Then the whispers began. Not the forest's natural hum or the wind stirring leaves, but voices in the pack-key, quiet at first. Subtle, like a knife sliding along silk. And yet Anaya recognized them. Doubt, suspicion, the faint sting of envy. Someone within the pack had seen the battle, had seen her survive, had seen her fight alongside Amos. And their tongues had begun to weave narratives of distrust. She froze as one of the younger pack members approached. Face tight with unease. And Aya, some of the elders, they're questioning your place here, he murmured. Tear saying that if the rogues wanted to strike, they could have caught you off guard. They think you're hiding something. Anaya's wolf stirred beneath her skin, sharp and defensive. Instincts flaring. Hiding something? She asked, voice low, clipped. From who? From all of us, he whispered, glancing nervously toward the line of trees. To think, maybe you're working with them. A cold shiver ran through her spine, though the sun was rising, spilling light across the forest floor. Betrayal, she realized, was not always delivered with intent. Sometimes it seeped like poison, soft and insidious, from the mouths of those too afraid to admit their own weakness. Amos's hand landed on her shoulder, firm and grounding, and the bond pulsed, a reminder that she was not alone. I accommodate them, he said, voice quiet but commanding. They don't understand, and they won't. Creasure eyes met his. Searching, desperate for reassurance that wasn't tied to fear. But what if they're right? Though she already knew the answer. The rogues had not struck without purpose. Someone within the pack was feeding information. Someone she couldn't trust, and every step she took would be under scrutiny. Amos's gaze hardened, sharp and unwavering. Then we will find out who it is. Together, the bond pulsed stronger, faster. And Anaya felt her wolf stir with anticipation. She had been alone for so long, mistrusted and hunted. And now she was a force that could fight back, that could challenge even the whispers of betrayal. The first confrontation came sooner than expected. An elder approached, robes brushing the ground, eyes calculating. Mouth set in a thin line. An Aeros, he said, voice tight, controlled, we need to speak. Now, an Aya stood. Muscles taut, claws itching beneath her skin. Amos stepped beside her, silent, alert, a barrier of strength and promise. The elder's gaze flicked between them, and for a brief second, Anaya felt the weight of scrutiny. Of centuries of hierarchy pressing down on her. You survived, he said finally, voice almost reluctant. Bit, there are questions. Rogue attacks, the timing, your proximity to Amos. Some fear this bond, your bond, might compromise the pack. That perhaps you are not loyal. The accusation hit harder than any claw or fang could. Anaya's jaw tightened. Eyes blazing. I fought alongside this pack when you would have left me to rot, she said, voice sharp, steady. I've bled, survived. And if loyalty is measured by fear, then perhaps you should look at yourselves. The elder hesitated, taken aback by her intensity. Amos's hand pressed lightly against her back, grounding her as her wolf roared beneath her skin. The bond flared, undeniable. A living pulse that demanded recognition. You speak with fire, the elder said slowly. And yet fire can consume as easily as it protects. Be careful, Anairos. Not all threats come from outside. Some come from those we call family. Anaya's pulse quickened, the bond thrummed, and she realized with a surge of clarity. Survival was no longer just about fighting rogues. It was about navigating deception, understanding power, and claiming her place within a world that had tried to reject her. And somewhere deep within, a plan began to form. She would not be prey. She would not be the pack's liability. She would be a force that no one, rogue or pack alike, could ignore. Amos's voice was low, a murmur only she could hear. "We face it all," he said. "Every shadow, every whisper, every hidden blade." Together, Anaya met his gaze, the bond flaring between them like a living thing. "Together," she echoed, letting the word root itself in her chest. The forest held its breath, waiting for the next move, for the next threat, for the next revelation. And Anaya Ross, once rejected, once hunted, felt the intoxicating pulse of power at her fingertips, ready to carve her destiny from the shadows and claim the life that had always been meant for her. Chapter 10. The Rogue's Game. Night fell over the Midnight Pack territory, a heavy, suffocating darkness that pressed against the trees and sank into the underbrush. Anaya's senses were heightened, every rustle, every whisper of wind amplified in her mind. The rogue attacks had become more brazen, more precise. As if someone within the Pacey's drew close enough to watch their movements, was orchestrating the chaos. Amos stood nearby, silent and alert, his presence a steadying force. The bond pulsed between them, strong and insistent, a living reminder that they were tethered. Whether Anaya wanted it or not, she had long since accepted that fact. The challenge now was controlling the power it demanded. A sudden movement in the clearing caught her attention. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and her wolf stirred beneath her skin, senses screaming danger. "Someone is here," she murmured, voice tight. Amos's eyes narrowed. "Show yourself," he demanded, a growl threading through his tone. "We're not your prey." From the darkness, a figure stepped forward, slow and deliberate, cloaked in black. Their features obscured, yet there was a confidence in their stride that made Anaya's pulse spike. "Anaya Ross," the figure said, voice smooth, deliberate. "You've grown strong, faster than expected." Anaya tensed, claws flexing beneath her skin. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Rogue? Spy?" The figure chuckled, a sound low and chilling. "Call me a player, a game master, and tonight, you're part of the game." Amos stepped in front of her, protective, every muscle coiled. "Whatever you want to take her," he said, teeth bared, eyes glowing faintly under the moonlight. The rogue tilted their head, considering. "Oh, I don't need to take her. Not tonight. No, all I need is to see how far she'll go. To see how much power she can wield, and how she chooses to use it." Anaya's wolf stirred violently, a low growl vibrating in her chest. The rogue had underestimated her. She had survived attacks, betrayal, and rejection. Now, faced with a threat cloaked in shadow, she felt the bond flare, Amos's presence amplifying the instinctual strength building inside her. "You'll find," she said slowly, voice combat edged with ice, "that I don't play games. And if you try to use me as a pawn, the consequences will be yours to bear." The rogue tilted their head, almost amused. "Bold words, let us see if your actions match them." And with that, they melted into the darkness, leaving a trail of unease and the faintest scent of malice behind. Anaya's gaze followed the rogue until they were gone, then turned to Amos. "It is not just the rogues attacking," she whispered, voice low. "Someone is guiding them, manipulating the chaos from within." Amos's jaw tightened. "I suspected as much. Every strike, every ambush, twist to precise. Someone wants you alive, but only just enough to make you react, enough to test the bond, to see what you're capable of." The realization sent a shiver down her spine. They weren't just being hunted, Tikure were being studied, measured, and the stakes were higher than she had imagined. "We need a plan," Anaya said, determination threading through her words. "We can't just react anymore. We need to be the ones in control." Amos nodded, eyes narrowing. "We set a trap. Draw them out. And when they reveal themselves, they would learn that Anaya Ross is no longer a pawn. She has a force." The bond pulsed stronger, and Anaya felt her wolf surge beneath her skin, a living, coiled energy that demanded release. For the first time, she realized that survival wasn't enough. She needed mastery, control. Understanding the depths of the power she had barely begun to explore. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Shadows stretching and shifting as if aware of the approaching storm. Somewhere in that darkness, the rogue waited. Confident in their game. But Anaya's resolve was absolute. She would not be cornered. She would not be used. And the bond, tethered to Amos, to strength, to destiny, would be her weapon. Amos's hand brushed hers. A silent reassurance, a spark of connection that flared through the bond. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice low, steady. Anaya met his gaze, wolf fire igniting within her. "I'm ready," she said, heart steady, pulse racing. Let us end their game. The forest seemed to pulse with anticipation, the shadows waiting. The wind whispering of challenges yet to come. And as night deepened, Anaya Ross, once rejected, once hunted, now stood as a living storm. Prepared to face the rogue's challenge, carve her destiny from the darkness that sought to claim her. Chapter 11. The first trap dawn had yet to break, and the forest lay draped in a thick silver mist that swallowed sound and softened shadows. Anaya crouched behind a dense thicket, senses straining. Wolf instincts sharpening every movement, every breath. Beside her, Amos moved like a shadow himself, fluid, silent. Coiled energy beneath the skin ready to strike. "This is where they will make their first move," Anaya whispered. Voice barely more than a breath. The bond pulsed sharply, Amos's presence threading through her mind, steady and commanding. The rogue was clever, cautious. They wouldn't reveal themselves easily, not unless they were certain Anya would bite first. "We lure them," Amos said, his tone measured. "But we don't chase. We wait. Let them make the mistake." Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but anticipation. Every lesson, every battle she had survived had led to this moment. She could feel her wolf coiling inside her, waiting to spring. To claim the predator before it could strike. Hours passed. The forest remained silent, as if holding its breath. Anaya's senses strained, listening to every snap of twig, every rustle of leaf. The rogue was patient, studying, testing. But so was she then, sound subtle, almost imperceptible, a faint brushing against dead leaves. A whisper of movement just beyond the line of trees. Anaya tensed. The bond pulsed violently. Amos's presence flaring in tandem. She could feel it, this was it. Amos crouched beside her, eyes scanning the shadows. "On my mark," he murmured. "We strike together." The rogue stepped into the clearing, hands lifted slightly. Posture casual, almost teasing. "I wondered how long it would take for you to notice me," they said, voice smooth, taunting. Clever girl, but not clever enough. Anaya's wolf surged, claws flexing beneath her skin. Her body moved on instinct. Fluid and lethal. She leapt from the thicket, Amos right behind her. The rogue tensed, but too late. Amos struck first. A blur of motion and power, forcing the rogue to dodge, retreating behind the protective shadow of their own speed. Anaya followed, landing silently, her eyes locked on the figure who had tormented them with whispers and fear. "You think you can control this game," Anaya said, voice low, carrying both warning and promise. "Bet you've underestimated what happens when the hunted becomes the hunter." The rogue laughed. A sound that sent a shiver down Anaya's spine, but her wolf did not hesitate. Power surged. Tendrils of energy weaving through her muscles, synchronizing with Amos's presence. Together, they moved as one Cestia striking. Feinting, testing, pushing the rogue back with every calculated step. "You're stronger than I expected," the rogue admitted. Retreating further. "But strength alone won't save you when the truth comes for you." Anaya froze. A chill tracing her spine at the words. "What truth?" she demanded, every nerve alert, claws ready. The rogue smirked, vanishing into the shadows with a mocking bow. "Patience. All in good time, but you'll see." The clearing fell silent again, the tension lingering like a thick fog. Amos turned to her, expression tight but approving. "They tested you, you held," he said. "This is only the beginning. Whoever is behind these attacks, they're measuring you, Ania. And next time, they won't hold back. Ania's pulse slowed only slightly. The thrill of victory was fleeting, replaced by the weight of understanding. The rogue wasn't just an enemy. Tiknich were a mirror, reflecting her strength and probing her weaknesses. And each step forward would demand more, push further, stretch the limits of both her human and wolf self. Her gaze met Amos's, and the bond pulsed, a silent promise threading between them. "We'll be ready," she said. "No matter what they throw at us," he nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder, grounding her, anchoring the wild storm within. "Together," he said, "always together." The mist thickened, swallowing the clearing once more. And the forest waited, silent, patient, as if it knew that the next move would define the game. And Ania was no longer a pawn. She was a force to be reckoned with. And the rogue would soon learn the cost of underestimating her. Chapter 12, Shadows. Within, the sun had yet to pierce the horizon, leaving the Pack's territory shrouded in a fragile twilight. And Aya moved through the narrow corridors of the Alpha-S stronghold with deliberate care, senses taut, every shadow a potential threat. Amos walked beside her, silent but vigilant, his presence a constant reassurance. The bond thrumming like a heartbeat in her mind. "It doesn't make sense," Ania whispered, glancing around the dim hallways. "The rogue attacks are coordinated, precise. Someone inside must be feeding them information." Amos's jaw tightened. "Yes. Someone who knows the Pack's routines, our patrol schedules, even weaknesses. They want us distracted, divided, vulnerable." His eyes scanned the corridors, sharp, calculating. "We need to find the leak before more lives are at risk." Ania's wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless, impatient. Every instinct screamed that danger lurked just beyond the edges of their vision. And yet, there was more, a subtle vibration, a whisper of deceit in the very air. She could feel it in the Pack's pulse. The way wolves avoided certain rooms, the way their eyes lingered too long on each other. "I'll start with the council records," Amos said. "You check the patrol logs. See if any inconsistencies stand out." Ania nodded, pulling her mind into focus. The bond with Amos pulsed sharply, urging her to trust him, to synchronize with his rhythm. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about understanding the intricate web of betrayal and deception threading through the Pack. And the closer she looked, the more she realized just how fragile the surface of loyalty could be. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of papers or a low growl of irritation from Ania when a suspicious entry refused to make sense. Then, name. She froze, eyes widening. "Amos, look at this." He leaned over, gaze sharp. "Who?" "Counselor Darius," she said, voice low but trembling. "He signed off on the border patrols, right before each rogue strike. Every time." "And it's deliberate." Amos's expression darkened. "Damn it." He ran a hand through his hair, tension radiating in every line of his body. "I should have seen this. He has been manipulating Pack movements to cover the rogue's actions. He is using his authority to weaken us from within." Ania swallowed hard, wolf instincts rising in tandem with her pulse. The revelation ignited a mix of anger and fear, anger at the betrayal, fear of the danger now magnified. "So, what do we do? If we confront him now, he'd vanish. We need proof." Amos's eyes softened briefly as he studied her. We'll gather the evidence, Ania. Together. But this is bigger than justice. The rogue attacks are just the start. Someone wants more than chaos. Tikner want control." A chill brushed her spine as the bond pulsed sharply. Amos's presence was steady, grounding, yet beneath it, she felt the ripple of uncertainty. The acknowledgement that trust could no longer be freely given. Her wolf growled softly, instinct warning her. Danger came not just from the shadows outside, but from within. As they moved through the corridors, shadows shifted unnaturally, almost as if the walls themselves were watching. Every glance felt like a test, every whisper a hidden threat. Ania realized that survival meant more than strength. Teak required perception, cunning, and the courage to confront truths that could fracture even the strongest bonds. "We'll uncover them," she said finally. Voice firm, tinged with resolve. "No matter how deep their betrayal runs, we impose it," Amos nodded. The bond tightening between them, a silent pledge of unity against the looming darkness. "And when we do, they TVT know exactly what it means to face both of us." The corridor stretched on, twisting like a labyrinth. But Ania no longer felt lost. The danger, the intrigue, the weight of responsibility, twit all sharpened her focus. Her wolf was awake now, not just a shadow beneath her skin, but a force she could feel guiding her, protecting her, amplifying her courage. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, eyes watched, calculating, waiting for the right moment to strike. But Anaya and Amos were already 2 steps ahead, their bond a silent weapon against the encroaching darkness. For the first time, Anaya understood the truth of power. It was not just in the claws, the teeth, or the strength of the wolf, but in the mind. The courage to see betrayal clearly, and the will to act when no one else could. Chapter 13, The Rogue's Whisper. Night draped the Pacus territory in a velvet darkness, punctuated by the occasional gleam of the moonlight cutting through the dense forest. And Aya crouched at the edge of the training grounds, her senses stretched taut, ears attuned to the faintest shift in the wind. Eyes scanning the movement of the trees like a predator. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin. Each heartbeat a rhythmic drum of anticipation, of alertness that refused to let her lower her guard. Amos appeared silently at her side, as if materializing from the shadows themselves. The bond pulsed sharply, urging her to trust him, yet warning her. The rogue's game was no longer distant. 'Twas here, in their midst, seeping like poison through the Pacus veins. "They're close," Amos murmured, voice low enough to be swallowed by the night. "Someone is testing us, probing for weakness. The rogue wants to see how we react." Anaya's eyes narrowed. "We can't let them know we're on to them. If they sense suspicion, they disappear before we can act." A subtle movement caught her attention, a figure slipping between the trees, careful, deliberate. Shadows clung to the intruder like a cloak, but Anaya's wolf instincts screamed the truth. This was no ordinary patrol scout. Whoever it was moved with intent, a confidence born from knowledge of the Pacus routines. "Split," Amos instructed softly. "You flank left. I will take the right. Don't let them escape." Anaya's pulse surged, the adrenaline, the fear, the electric anticipation of confrontation. Twit all sharpened her awareness. Her wolf responded instinctively, heightening her senses, making the shadows themselves seem alive, revealing details otherwise hidden in the night. As she closed in on the intruder, she caught a fragment of sound, whispers carried on the wind, barely discernible. "Tonight. The council, vulnerability." Her breath caught. Someone within the pack was giving information to the rogues. Someone trusted, someone unsuspected. And Aya's mind raced, trying to match the whispers to faces, routines, the subtle inconsistencies she had noticed earlier in patrol logs and council records. Before she could react further, the intruder vanished into the trees with uncanny speed, leaving behind only a trail of disturbed leaves and the faint echo of their whispered words. Anaya's wolf growled low, frustration and hunger coiling in her chest. "They're testing us," Amos said, appearing beside her, eyes sharp, lips pressed into a thin line. "We've found the first sign of their inside help. Now we know they exist. We just need to find out who." Anaya nodded, determination hardening within her. The rogue's whisper was not just a threat, Twister was a challenge. Her wolf surged, pushing her senses into overdrive, sharpening her mind as much as her instincts. Every sound, every shadow, every rustle of leaves became a potential clue, a key to unraveling the betrayal that had seeped into her home. The bond pulsed, a silent connection with Amos that reinforced her resolve. "We'll catch them," she said firmly. "No matter how deep their treachery goes, we'll expose it and protect the pack." Amos's gaze softened momentarily, a rare flicker of pride and respect. "And we'll do it together. This bond, it has more than survival. It has the force that will see us through the darkness." The forest seemed to hold its breath around them. Somewhere in the shadows, the rogue watched, patient and calculating, unaware that their first move had already been observed. Their whispers traced and recorded by senses attuned beyond ordinary perception. Anaya felt the surge of power, the awakening of potential she hadn't yet fully understood. The rogue's whisper had awakened something within her, something dangerous, something strong, something that could turn the tide. And as the night stretched on, Anaya realized that she was no longer merely surviving. She was beginning to hunt. Chapter 14. Threads of betrayal. Dawn broke over the pack's territory in muted shades of gray and silver. A pale light spilling over the treetops and illuminating the frost-kissed ground. Anaya stood atop a ridge overlooking the valley, her eyes tracing the familiar paths and hidden nooks where pack members moved with quiet diligence. But the serenity of morning felt fragile, a thin veneer over the unease that churned in her gut. Amos approached from behind, his boots crunching softly on the frost, and his expression was taut, controlled. The bond between them thrummed with quiet urgency, echoing the instinctive knowledge that danger lingered closer than they could afford. I traced the whispers, Anaya said without turning. They weren't random. Someone from the council, feeding information to the rogues. Amos's jaw tightened. I suspected as much. But hearing it confirmed, it changes everything. It means the threat isn't just outside the pact, yes, inside. Her wolf stirred violently beneath her skin. A visceral sense of betrayal that made her claws itch and her senses flare. Every face in the pack could now be a potential enemy. Every friendly gesture, a mask concealing treachery. Anaya's mind raced with the possibilities. Memories of subtle inconsistencies, small anomalies, strange behaviors she had dismissed before. Each thread of suspicion tangled around her, weaving a complex web that demanded unraveling. I've narrowed it down, she said finally, spinning to face Amos. Her eyes were fierce, shining with a determination that had grown stronger with each trial. To possibilities. And both have access to information about patrols, council meetings, and pack security. Amos stepped closer, his presence grounding her, the bond between them pulsing in quiet synchronization. Then we test them. Quietly. Observe. Push them just enough to see the cracks. Anaya's wolf growled low, agreeing. Tension coiling in her muscles as she prepared for the subtle dance of observation and deception. They would need patience, strategy, and cunning. Strength alone would not be enough to unmask a traitor who moved like a shadow within their midst. Hours passed as they silently monitored the movements of their suspects. Every gesture, every whispered conversation, every fleeting glance was catalogued and analyzed. Their heightened sense is catching what ordinary eyes would have missed. Anaya felt her instincts sharpen, a predatoress awareness taking over. She no longer felt like a victim of circumstance, she felt like a hunter, tracing the unseen threads of betrayal with calculated precision. Finally, as the sun climbed higher, a small sign appeared, a subtle deviation in routine. A hand lingered too long over a secure passage. A glance exchanged too knowingly with an outsider. Anaya's pulse quickened. The rogue's ally had revealed themselves, however subtly, and now they had the evidence they needed. We have them, she said, voice low but resolute. They think they're clever but they've underestimated us. Amos nodded, his eyes shadowed with the weight of responsibility and the quiet storm of their shared bond. Once we move, we do it cleanly. No mistakes, no alerts. The pack's safety depends on it. Anaya's wolf flared beneath her skin, the surge of power almost overwhelming, and she let it flow, channeling it into focus, clarity, and resolve. She was no longer the rejected mate, the girl haunted by past mistakes and the judgment of her peers. She was a Narration wolf, the hunter, the force the rogues had not accounted for. As they prepared to strike, a chilling thought settled over her, a whisper that the rogue's plans were far deeper than mere treachery. Someone had orchestrated these threads with intent, weaving chaos from within, and the full scope of the danger was yet unseen. But Anaya felt no fear, only the fierce certainty that she would meet it head on. The rogue's whisper had become a clarion call, awakening her strength, her bond with Amos, and a resolve that would not bend. The hunt had begun. And this time, Anaya would not merely survive, was time to reclaim everything the darkness had tried to take. Chapter 15. Shadows in the Council. The council chamber smelled of polished wood and faint incense. A fragile veneer of order that barely concealed the undercurrent of fear threading through the pack's leadership. And Aya stepped inside, her boots silent against the stone floor, every sense alert. Eyes that once ignored her presence now flicked toward her with a mixture of curiosity and restrained caution. She had changed. She had evolved. The girl who had been locked away, rejected by her mate and shunned by her pack, was gone. In her place stood a wolf fully aware of her power, and a mate whose bond pulsed in quiet, commanding resonance beside her. Amos followed closely, his posture rigid, every movement a subtle declaration of authority. He had called the council to discuss the recent rogue attacks and the betrayal within their ranks. But he knew that appearances alone would not suffice. Trust was fractured, and suspicion hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Ania's gaze swept across the room. Each council member carried the weight of responsibility, treached the possibility of treachery. She had narrowed her focus to the two most suspicious figures, their hands betraying slight tremors, their eyes darting with too much awareness. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, coiling like a spring ready to strike. "Thank you for convening," Amos began, his voice steady, carrying the quiet command of someone used to being obeyed. "We face threats from outside and within. Rogue attacks have increased. And there is evidence of collaboration from someone in this room." A ripple passed through the chamber. And Aya noted the subtle shifts, tightening of jaws, the small coughs, the clearing of throats that tried to mask the rise of anxiety. She felt her pulse accelerate, sensing each lie, each hesitation. As though her wolf could taste the dishonesty in the air. Amos's eyes met hers briefly. No words were needed. They moved in sync, a silent understanding that the bond between them was now as sharp and lethal as their combined instincts. Anaya stepped forward. "I will not stand by while our pack is undermined from within," she said, her voice steady, low, but carrying an unyielding authority. "The one responsible for leaking information to the rogues has shown themselves. I can see the threads, I can feel the lie. The question is, who among you will answer for it?" The chamber grew tense. Silence thickened heavy. One council member shifted nervously, a hand brushing against a concealed dagger at the belt. Small, almost imperceptible movement, but enough for Anaya's heightened senses to catch. The first thread had been pulled. Amos's voice cut through the tension, but commanding. "Step forward, or I will ensure the truth is uncovered by other means." The council member's eyes flicked to their companion. Panic barely contained. Finally, a man rose, voice shaky but defiant. "You have no proof. You cannot accuse without evidence." Anaya's wolf flared. She could feel the power radiating from her mate. A steady pulse against the rising tension in her chest. "Proof?" she repeated, each syllable deliberate. "I have observed. I have tracked. I have felt the deception. You underestimate us." A sudden commotion erupted as the other suspect lunged toward the first. A desperate attempt to silence the accusation. Anaya's reflexes were instantaneous. She shifted partially, claws extended, wolfish strength propelling her forward. The chamber erupted into chaos as pack members reacted, some rushing to intervene, others stunned by the sudden transformation. Amos moved as one with her, his presence anchoring the storm. Together, they subdued the rogue duo, revealing the carefully hidden alliance with the outsiders. The rogue's network that had been slowly undermining the pack's defenses. As the dust settled, Anaya stood tall, chest heaving, eyes blazing with the clarity of purpose. She had faced treachery and emerged stronger. And the bond between her and Amos resonated with renewed intensity, a pulse of fire and trust that no deception could sever. The council looked on, shock and newfound respect in their eyes. The shadows in the chamber had been revealed. And the pack's unity, fragile as it was, had found a new anchor. But Anaya knew this was only the beginning. The rogue's plot ran deeper than even they realized. And the forces moving in the shadows were far more dangerous than a few corrupt council members. She had tasted the power within her, and the world beyond the pack was beginning to call. As Amos took her hand, the bond thrumming with quiet strength, Anaya realized that she was no longer merely surviving, she was ready to fight. To claim her destiny, and to protect everything she had come to love. And somewhere, in the silent corridors of power, the true mastermind watched, patient, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Chapter 16. The mastermind, a shadow knight, had draped Havermouth in a suffocating velvet. Thick with mist and the faint scent of rain, soaked earth. From the shadows of the tallest buildings, a figure watched the Pack's headquarters with a stillness that belied the storm within. Every move of Anaya and Amos had been tracked, every council session noted, every bond felt. The mastermind had waited, bided their time, and now the pieces were in motion. Inside the headquarters, Anaya and Amos sat across from each other in the war room, maps and notes strewn across the oak table. Her claws still tingled from the confrontation earlier, the echoes of her wolf-esque presence lingering like fire beneath her skin. Amos's gaze was intense, eyes scanning the room, but constantly returning to her, anchoring, grounding, and silently warning. "They know we're onto them," Anaya said, voice low but steady. "I can feel it. Whoever orchestrated this isn't just reckless, Tiger patient, methodical. They've waited for every crack in the pack to show itself before striking." Amos nodded, jaw tight. "We've seen the puppets, but not the puppeteer. And they're clever. Too clever." Anaya's wolf stirred at the words. A primal warning buried deep in her instincts. She rose, pacing the room, fingers brushing over the maps. "If we underestimate them even for a moment, the pack will fall. And not justice, town, the humans. Everyone who doesn't know the truth about our kind is at risk." A flicker of movement on the security monitors drew her attention. Shadows shifted outside, just beyond the floodlights. "They're testing us," she murmured, crouching to study the feeds. "Probing our defenses, looking for weakness." Amos moved beside her, the warmth of his presence steadying her. "We won't give them one," he said. "Not a single inch. Not a single life." The room fell into a tense silence, the weight of their shared bond pulsing like a drumbeat in the air. Anaya's mind raced, connecting fragments, piecing together the timing of attacks, the subtle betrayals within the council, the odd gaps in patrol reports. The mastermind was meticulous, calculating, patient, and cruel in ways that made her blood run cold. Then she saw it, a small detail overlooked by the others. A pattern in the attacks that pointed not outward, but inward. The mastermind wasn't just external. They had access, knowledge, someone embedded deep within the pack. Someone they had trusted. Her pulse quickened. "Amos, it is someone in the council we didn't suspect. They've been hiding in plain sight, feeding information, orchestrating chaos without ever revealing themselves." Amos's eyes narrowed. "Do you know who?" Antaraya shook her head. "Not yet, but I will. I can feel them, degree or presence, their intent, every heartbeat. Every subtle shift of energy tells me they're watching us right now. Waiting for the perfect moment to strike again." A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, carrying with it a faint whisper of movement, a ghost of a threat that only Anaya's heightened senses could detect. She straightened, eyes scanning the room, heart thundering, not with fear, but with determination. "They think they can manipulate us," she said, voice firm, resonating with a power that had grown stronger with each trial she faced. "They think we won't see the strings. But I've learned how to fight shadows, Amos. I've learned how to follow them. Even when they try to vanish into darkness." Amos's hand found hers, the bond between them humming with unspoken promises and shared understanding. "Then we'll root them out," he said. Together, outside, the mastermind retreated into the darkness, a faint smirk crossing their features. They had underestimated Anaya once. They would not make that mistake again. The game was far from over. And Havermouth was about to be engulfed in a storm unlike any it had ever known. Inside, Anaya's wolf stirred, coiling with anticipation and raw power. She was ready, stronger than ever, and nothing, no shadow, no rogue, no mastermind, would break her. Not now. Not ever. The first move had been revealed, and the hunt was just beginning. This chapter escalates suspense, sets up the hidden mastermind as the next major threat, and keeps cinematic tension. Ideal for long YouTube narration. Chapter 17. The Pack in Turmoil. The morning light spilled unevenly across the Havermoth Pack's headquarters, slicing through the mist like silver blades. Yet, inside the walls, warmth and sunlight were overshadowed by a tension that made every breath feel heavier. The Pack was restless. Whispers threading through the halls, doubts gnawing at loyalty, and suspicion settling like a shadow no fire could chase away. And Aya moved through the corridors with quiet purpose, her wolf alert to every shift in energy, every hushed conversation. Each step echoed with authority now, not born of her title, but earned through trials that had tempered her into a force the Pack could not ignore. Her eyes, sharp and luminous, caught the subtle signs of unease, a guard lingering too long at a post, a council member's hesitation when meeting her gaze, the faint tremor in a younger wolf's shoulders. Amos followed closely, hand occasionally brushing hers, a silent anchor in the swirling tension. "They were afraid," he said, voice low enough that only she could hear. "They don't need know if they can trust you, gird themselves." Anaya paused, turning to face him. Her pulse thrummed in rhythm with the undercurrent of the Packosphere. "Then they need to see strength. Not just mine, but ours." The council chamber was packed. Wolves of every rank filled the room, some standing, some seated, all eyes darting nervously between Anaya and Amos. Murmurs ceased the moment Anaya's presence filled the space, a quiet authority that demanded attention without a single command. She stepped to the front, letting her gaze sweep over every face. "We've been infiltrated," she said, voice steady, each word weighted with clarity. "Someone among us has betrayed trust, used our own weaknesses against us, and endangered every life in this pack. The mastermind is patient and cunning, but patience ends tonight. We will uncover them. And when we do, they will answer for everything." A tense silence followed, then, a ripple of disbelief, eyes widening, some turning toward the council members in accusation, whispers of panic threatening to spill over. Amos stepped forward beside her, his presence reinforcing hers. "Doubt is dangerous," he said. "Fear is contagious. But loyalty is stronger when forged in fire. We've survived attacks that should have broken us. And we will survive this together." A hand raised in the back. Tarin, one of the older council wolves, voice sharp with skepticism. "And what if the traitor is someone we trust? Someone whose allegiance is hidden beneath the mask of loyalty? How do we know who to watch?" Anaya's gaze hardened, her wolf stirred, sensing the unspoken tension, fear, the uncertainty, and the undercurrent of hidden threats. "We don't guess. We observe. We test. Every action, every choice will reveal them. We watch the shadows and let the truth walk into the light." A younger wolf, barely out of adolescence, trembled as they asked, "And if the danger is outside? Not within?" Amos's eyes flicked to Anaya, a silent signal that they were on the same page. She nodded slightly, voice calm yet resonant. "Then we prepare. Both within and beyond these walls. The mastermind is calculating. But they have underestimated one thing: our resilience, our bond, and our ability to fight together." The room shifted. Eyes once filled with doubt now glimmered with cautious hope. Wolves straightened, shoulders squared, teeth gritted, but determination was replacing fear. Anaya turned to the maps laid across the table, tracing potential threats, noting patrol routes, and marking vulnerable points. Amos mirrored her attention, ready to step into danger at a moment's notice. The pack watched, learning to trust her instincts, her vision. Outside, the fog lingered over Havermouth, dense and unyielding, but inside, a spark had been lit, a spark of unity, tempered by fire and trial. Anaya and Amos stood at the center, a tether between leadership and loyalty, ready to confront whatever the shadows had concealed for so long. Her wolf growled softly, a coiled warning and a thrill of anticipation. The mastermind's moves had set the board, but Anaya's pieces were in motion now. Every heartbeat, every breath, every choice would determine whether the packfeller rose stronger than ever. And for the first time, Anaya felt a surge of clarity and power that was unmistakable. She was no longer merely surviving. She was leading. And Havermouth would remember the name of the wolf who refused to break. Chapter 18. Ambushed at dusk. The sky bled shades of amber and crimson. The sun sinking behind the jagged silhouettes of Havermathestries. Shadows stretched long and thin, whispering through the forest like the fingers of ghosts. Enia's senses were on high alert, her wolf twitching beneath her skin, picking up the subtle vibrations of movement in the underbrush. Something was wrong. Amos walked beside her, ever the sentinel, his gaze sweeping the horizon, muscles coiled like a predator ready to strike. "I don't like this," he murmured, voice low enough for only her to hear. The calm before dusk usually hides the storm, and Naya nodded, gripping the hilt of her dagger, the other hand brushing instinctively against Amos's arm, a silent acknowledgement of trust. Then we wait for the storm to reveal itself. They moved carefully along the forest path, the crunch of leaves underfoot muffled by the growing fog. Every rustle, every snap of a twig, set their nerves taut. Wolves that had once been loyal now skulked nervously, aware that unseen eyes might be watching them. The pack had grown restless since the council meeting, their fear translating into whispers that slithered through the camp like smoke. Suddenly, a figure darted from behind a cluster of oaks, silvery fur glinting faintly in the fading light, but it wasn't one of their own. Before Anaya could react, more shapes emerged from the shadows, rogue wolves, their eyes glinting with malice, teeth bared, claws ready. The ambush was swift, merciless. Amos shifted, muscles rippling as he went into wolf form, towering and imposing, a shield between Enya and the attackers. "Go?" he barked, voice raw with urgency. "Take cover. Move." Anaya's wolf surged, instincts igniting. She leapt into action, striking, weaving, countering every attack with a precision born of survival and training. Her fangs clamped down on a roguish shoulder, claws raking across fur and flesh. But there were too many. The pack had underestimated the enemy's numbers. A sudden yelp drew her attention. One of the younger wolves, barely 15, had been cornered by 3 rogues. Snarling and snapping at him, Anaya didn't hesitate. She tore through the line of attackers, her body moving with supernatural agility, her mind a razor edge of focus. Amos was at her side in an instant, tackling 2 rogues to the ground, growls vibrating through his chest, warning the others to keep their distance. The fight was chaotic. Fur flew, claws slashed, teeth sank, but Anaya's wolf was no longer timid. Every strike, every defensive move was calculated, a symphony of controlled ferocity. Then, she sensed it, a subtle, chilling presence behind the ambush, a shadow not yet revealed. The mastermind. Her heart hammered as the realization struck. This attack wasn't a random. It was orchestrated, meant to test, to provoke, to weaken them before the real strike. Amos growled low, reading her mind as if the bond between them amplified instinct. "Stay close. Whatever comes next, we face it together." The remaining rogues began to retreat, but the one shadowy figure lingered at the edge of the clearing, eyes fixed on Anaya. She caught a glimpse of something familiar in the stance, something she couldn't quite place. Then the figure vanished into the dusk, leaving only a whisper of malice behind. Anaya's wolf growled, muscles coiled and ready, but she forced herself to calm. She scanned the forest, sensing the quiet tension settling like smoke. The attack had been a warning, a message. The danger was closer than they thought, and the mastermind was not done yet. Breathing heavily, she turned to Amos. "This isn't over," she said, voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "They're testing us." Finding our weaknesses, Amos nodded, wolf ears twitching as he scanned the shadows. "Then we give them no weaknesses to exploit. We prepare, we watch, and we strike before they can move again." Anaya's eyes hardened, determination blazing through the fear. The forest around them, once a place of eerie calm, now felt alive with potential threats. But she was no longer the scared, rejected mate they had all doubted. She was ready to fight, for herself, for her pack, and for the chance to claim the life she had been denied. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, leaving only the muted glow of the moon. The night stretched ahead, long, uncertain, and dangerous, but Anaya knew this. No shadow could extinguish the fire that had begun to burn within her. And in that fire, the pack would rise, stronger and more united than ever. Chapter 19, Secrets. Beneath the moonlight, the moon hung low and silver over Havermouth, casting pale light across the ruins of the forest clearing. The ambush had ended hours ago, but its echoes lingered, broken branches, scorched earth, and the unmistakable scent of fear that clung to the trees. And Aya crouched atop a moss-covered boulder, eyes scanning the darkness as her wolf coiled beneath her skin, restless and alert. Amos was beside her, his posture rigid, ears twitching at every distant sound. "They're organized," he said quietly, voice taut with warning. "Not just rogues, someone is directing them. Someone who knows us. Knows you, knows exactly how to provoke you." Anaya nodded, feeling a chill ripple down her spine. The attacks were no longer random. They were personal, calculated. And the shadow that had lingered at the edge of the clearing was proof of it. She shifted slightly, letting the cool night air brush against her skin, thinking about the bond between them. Despite everything, rejection, the danger, the chaos, pull of the mate bond was undeniable. Her wolf stirred with something deeper now, a force she hadn't felt before, anchoring her to Amos in ways both terrifying and comforting. "Why now?" she whispered, almost to herself. "Why show yourself only after everything I've survived?" Amos's eyes softened for the briefest of moments. "Because you've grown stronger," he said. "Stronger than they anticipated. And stronger than you realize." His hand brushed against hers, a touch that sent sparks down her spine. "You're the key. And Aya. They know it. I know it. And soon, you will too." The forest seemed to hold its breath as they moved deeper into the trees, shadows stretching long and thin under the silver glow. Anaya's senses were alert to every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig. Her wolf sniffed the air, catching whispers of movement far beyond her sight. Someone was watching them. They reached a secluded clearing where a small, crystalline pool reflected the moonlight. Amos gestured for her to sit beside him. "We need to talk about what you're becoming," he said, voice low and serious. "The power inside you, Twit's not just your wolf. It's unique, rare, and dangerous in the wrong hands." Anaya's eyes widened. "Dangerous? Me?" Her pulse quickened. "I've survived attacks, betrayal, rejection. I've survived attacks, betrayal, rejection. I've survived attacks, Amos. And now you're telling me I am dangerous?" He shook his head. "Not dangerous to us. Dangerous to them." His gaze pierced her, steady and unwavering. "They want to use you. Your strength, your bond. The fire that they've tried to suppress, to control everything. That is why they've been attacking, probing. You're the target, Anaya. And we need to uncover who is behind it before it's too late." Anaya's wolf growled low in her chest, a surge of protective instinct that matched the rising tension. "Then we find them," she said firmly. "I won't let them control me. I won't let them hurt anyone else." Amos nodded approvingly. "Good. But first, we need answers." They began to circle the pool, searching the edges for signs, scratches, footprints, traces of magic. The water reflected the moonlight, illuminating faint symbols carved into the stones surrounding it. And Aya crouched, fingertips tracing the etched lines, a chill running through her. These markings weren't random. They spoke of ancient power, of old rituals that could bind, control, or destroy. "They're tracking us," she murmured. "Not just physically, but magically." Amos's jaw tightened. "Then we need to prepare for more than just wolves with teeth. Whoever is behind this, they're playing a deeper game." A sudden rustle of leaves made Anaya spin, dagger at the ready. The shadow at the far edge of the clearing froze, then melted into the darkness. Her pulse surged. Someone had been watching them. Someone close. Someone patient. "Not everyone in the pack can be trusted," Amos said, tone sharp. "We'll have to be careful, watch each other's backs, question everything." Anaya's wolf growled, eyes narrowing. The night was no longer just dark, 'twas alive with secrets, with threats unseen, with the weight of destiny pressing down on her shoulders. She clenched her fists, determination blazing. "I am not afraid," she whispered. I won't be used. I won't be broken again. Amos reached out, placing a firm hand on her shoulder, grounding her. And you won't be. Not while I am here. The moonlight shimmered across the pool, casting silver threads over their skin. In that quiet moment, amidst the whispering shadows and unseen eyes, Anya realized that the path ahead would be treacherous, but she was ready to face it. She was no longer the rejected mate in the shadows. She was rising. And the secrets beneath the moonlight were about to be unveiled. Chapter 20. The Shadowous Revelation. The dawn crept over Havermouth like liquid gold, spilling light across the jagged rooftops of the abandoned town. Anya moved cautiously through the misty streets, her senses sharp, every sound magnified by the tension coiling inside her. Amos walked beside her, his presence a steady anchor, wolf instincts flaring just beneath his skin. The rogues are clever, he muttered, scanning the empty windows and alleyways. Tino were hunting them. Yet they leave these breadcrumbs. Anya's gaze fell on the dark markings etched into the walls, arcane symbols that pulsed faintly, as if alive. She bent closer, tracing the edges with her fingers. They're leading us somewhere, she whispered. Why? Amos's eyes narrowed. To a trap, most likely. But also, to a revelation. Whoever is orchestrating this wants you to see it. To understand what you've been resisting, her wolf growled low in her chest. A protective instinct that matched the rising unease in the air. The mate bond throbbed between them, subtle but insistent, reminding her that she was not alone, sure that Amos's loyalty was absolute. They reached the center of the ruined town square, where the cobblestones formed a jagged circle around a collapsed fountain. Here, the air felt heavy, charged with an energy that made Anya's fur bristle. Shadows twisted unnaturally, and the scent of magic was strong, almost suffocating. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked being, whose presence radiated authority and malice. Anya's heart skipped a beat, and Amos stepped forward, protective and unyielding. Welcome, the figure said, voice smooth and chilling. I've been expecting you, Anya Ross. Anya's pulse quickened. Who are you? She demanded, dagger raised, wolf instincts flaring. What do you want? The figure laughed softly, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. I am the one who has been orchestrating your trials. The one who has been testing your strength, your resolve, your potential, Amos growled, stepping closer. You'll answer to me if you try anything. The cloaked figure tilted its head, unfazed. Ah. Alpha Amos, so predictable. But the girl, your mate, she is not just a pawn. She is the key. The power she holds within is exceptional, rare, dangerous. And I intend to claim it before you can interfere. Anya's hands trembled, but her resolve did not falter. You won't control me, she said firmly. I am not your weapon. I am not your prey. And no one will take what is mine. A flicker of amusement crossed the figure's face. Brave words for someone who has barely begun to understand her own strength. At that moment, the air shimmered, and Anya felt her wolf stir in ways it never had before, a surge of power that coursed through her veins, awakening instincts and abilities she had only glimpsed in dreams. Her senses expanded, her mind sharpened, and she realized for the first time just how potent she had become. Amos's eyes widened, recognizing the change. Anya, your wolf, as fully awakening. The cloaked figure's expression darkened. Ah. So it begins. With a sudden movement, the figure extended a hand, sending a wave of energy toward Anya. She leapt instinctively, twisting midair, and the force barely grazed her. Her wolf roared, a sound that resonated with the earth itself, shaking the shadows back. Amos moved to stand beside her, ready to shield and protect. Stay close, he urged, eyes blazing with determination. Anya steadied herself, feeling the raw power within her thrumming like a drumbeat. I'm ready, she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of resolve. Whatever this is, I will not be controlled. I will fight. The figure's cloak fluttered as the shadows coalesced, forming spectral shapes that lunged toward them. But Anya, empowered and fearless, met them head on. Her wolf surged, intertwining with her human instincts, creating a force that pushed back the darkness, forcing the specters to retreat with piercing shrieks. The cloaked figure stumbled slightly, surprise flickering across their features. Impossible, Seamus stepped forward, grasping Anaya's hand. "You're not alone," he said firmly. "We face this together." Anaya felt the bond between them flare, fierce and protective, amplifying her power. The shadows recoiled, unable to touch them, and for the first time, Anaya realized something vital. Her strength was not just in her wolf, or even in her bond, 'twas in her choice, her defiance, and the unity they shared. The cloaked figure retreated into the darkness, vanishing with a whisper of warning. "This is only the beginning. You cannot hide from what is coming." Anaya's chest heaved, adrenaline surging. But she stood tall. "Then let them come," she said, eyes gleaming. "I am ready for whatever comes next." Amos tightened his grip, a silent promise in his touch. Together, they turned toward the path leading deeper into the town, toward the secrets that awaited, toward the battles yet to come. The night held its breath, knowing that Anaya had finally begun to embrace her destiny, that nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 21. Confrontation at the Edge. The forest at the edge of Havermouth felt alive, almost sentient. As Anaya and Amos moved through the thick underbrush, each step was careful, deliberate, each sound, snapping twig, a rustling leaf, sent shivers down their spines. The rogue attacks had grown bolder, their pattern more sinister, as if leading them toward a confrontation that neither could fully anticipate. Anaya's senses were sharper than ever. Her wolf had taken full control of her instincts, guiding her, warning her, and sometimes, commanding her. Every shadow seemed to whisper, every gust of wind carried secrets. But it was not fear that drove her, it was determination. She would not let herself be a pawn. She would not allow anyone to claim the power she had fought so hard to awaken. Amos moved beside her, a constant presence of strength and protection. "The rogues have made camp somewhere ahead," he murmured, voice low, almost reverent in its caution. "They are expecting resistance, but they won't expect what you're capable of." Anaya's eyes narrowed. "Good. Let them underestimate me, let them regret it." The clearing opened abruptly, revealing a jagged cliffside that overlooked the dense woods below. Fires flickered in the distance, small but deliberate, signals of rogue activity. Shadows shifted unnaturally around the edges of the fires, their forms vaguely humanoid yet distorted, as if the darkness itself had been given flesh. Amos's wolf growled, muscles tensing beneath his skin. "Stay close," he instructed. "I don't know how many there are, but they're magic. It is stronger than before. They're feeding off the fear of the land, the chaos they've sown. They're trying to bind you, Anaya. To control you." Anaya inhaled sharply, feeling the pulse of her own power respond. Sharp and vibrant, a counterforce to the darkness that encroached. "They won't," she whispered. "I've been bound before, by fear, by rejection, but not anymore, not now." They advanced cautiously toward the fires, the shadows pulling back slightly as if aware of their approach. Then, without warning, a figure emerged, a rogue, taller than the rest, cloaked in darkness that seemed to writhe and pulse. Its eyes glowed faintly red, fixed on Anaya. "You've come far," the rogue said, voice a chilling melody. "But this is where your journey ends. You cannot hope to control what you barely understand." Anaya's wolf stirred, low and dangerous. She could feel the energy thrumming beneath her skin, her senses weaving together human intellect and wolf instinct. "I don't need to hope," she said, voice firm. "I know." The rogue laughed, a hollow, echoing sound that bounced off the trees and cliffs. "Bold. But boldness alone will not save you." Amos stepped forward, his presence a wall of protection. "We face this together," he said. "Whatever comes." "You are not alone." Anaya met his gaze, feeling the bond flare like a beacon in the darkness. She drew upon the energy coursing through her, the strength she had nurtured, the will she had forged through pain and survival. Shadows surged toward them, dozens of forms, writhing and clawing. But Anaya's power erupted. A wave of light and force radiated from her, pushing the shadows back, forcing them to recoil and twist in pain. She leapt forward, wolf and human in perfect harmony, striking at the rogue at the center. The energy around her shivered. A shockwave that rattled the forest and sent the rogue sprawling backward. Amos lunged, catching her mid-step, anchoring her to reality as the rogue regained its form. Now, he shouted. Finish it. Anaya. With a roar that blended human courage and wolf ferocity, Anaya surged, her claws and fangs manifesting as her energy solidified. She struck the rogue, the force of her attack shattering its defenses. The figure collapsed into a heap of shadow and smoke, dissipating with a final scream that echoed across the cliffside. For a moment, silence. The fires burned brighter, but the rogue threat was diminished. Ania's chest heaved, her wolf nuzzling her from within, protective and proud. Amos turned toward her, eyes blazing with pride and relief. You've done it, he said, voice low and intense. You controlled it. You controlled yourself, Anaya nodded, feeling the power settling within her, coiling like a sleeping predator. She looked out over the forest, aware of the danger that still lingered, but confident now in her ability to face it. We've only just begun, she said softly. There's more coming, but I am ready. Amos's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Then we face it together, always. The wind swept across the cliffside, carrying away the lingering echoes of the rogue's presence, leaving only the sound of the forest and the steady pulse of their bond. Anaya and Amos stood side by side, prepared for whatever darkness awaited, more certain than ever that nothing could break them while they stood together. Chapter 22. Secrets in the Blood. The ruins of the old estate loomed ahead, half swallowed by twisted ivy and shadows that moved like living things. Anaya and Amos stepped carefully across the fractured stone path, the air thick with a scent of damp earth and secrets long buried. Every footfall echoed against the cracked walls, a rhythmic reminder of the history that had been abandoned, of the truths waiting to be uncovered. Amos's grip on her hand was firm, grounding her as her wolfish instincts twined with her own thoughts. Something is here, he murmured, eyes scanning the crumbling facade. Not just the rogues, but something older. A message left behind, or a warning. Anaya swallowed, her pulse quickening. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, alert and restless, sensing traces of magic and blood that had lingered for decades. She had fought shadows, rogues, and betrayal. But there was a different weight here, a legacy wrapped in silence and pain. The grand hall of the estate opened before them, shattered chandeliers swinging slightly from unseen drafts. Dust motes floated in the beams of moonlight that penetrated the broken roof, illuminating fragments of portraits, faces frozen in both pride and fear. Anaya's gaze landed on a desk overturned, paper scattered across the floor. Old ink faded but still legible to someone who knew where to look. She knelt carefully, brushing the dust from a single parchment. Symbols sprawled across it in a careful hand, ink dark and deliberate, genealogies, names, dates. And then, her heart seized her mother's name. Beneath it, a note scrawled with trembling clarity. The child is the key. Protect her, the bond will awaken, but she must survive what is coming. Anaya's breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she read the words again, tasting both the terror and hope they carried. Her mother had known. She had left warnings, a trail, a puzzlement for her to solve, for her to understand the power running through her veins. Amos leaned closer, his presence a steady anchor. This isn't just about the rogues, he said softly, voice echoing in the hollow hall. It is about bloodlines, inheritance, destiny. The danger they pose isn't just immediate, twitch-s generational. Anaya's wolf growled low, attuned to a surge of magic she hadn't felt before. I've been fighting for control, she murmured. But I've never understood why, or what it really means. Her eyes met Amos's. Now I think I do, he nodded, gaze unwavering. And now you'll have to decide how far you're willing to go. How much of yourself you're willing to give to claim what is yours, and protect what you love. Her gaze swept over the scattered papers, her mother's careful annotations revealing alliances, enemies, and warnings of betrayal. Secrets hidden for years, now suddenly within reach, illuminating a path forward, but one strewn with peril. Anaya's hands clenched, wolf and human merging seamlessly. I won't run from this anymore, she said, voice low but commanding. I won't hide from what I am, or what I can do. If I must face darkness to protect this bond, then so be it. A sudden movement cut Emma's eye. Shadows twisted unnaturally along the far wall, subtle but deliberate. A figure stepped into the moonlight, someone familiar yet unexpected. A rogue, masked and silent. Holding a blade that shimmered with dark energy, Anaya felt the surge immediately, power within her flaring. Wolf instincts screaming. She stepped forward, body coiled, ready. The rogue lunged, but she was faster, her senses sharper. Her connection to Amos amplifying her every move. A blur of movement, a clash of energy. And the blade shattered against the force of her own power. You're stronger than they expected, the rogue hissed. Retreating just enough to vanish into the shadows. Bit strength alone won't save you from what is coming. Anaya's chest heaved as she turned to Amos. Eyes burning with determination. I've only just begun, she said. Whatever plans they had, whatever bloodlines they thought they controlled, they've underestimated me. Amos stepped closer, hand on her shoulder. Grounding her. And now they will see why you are the one who cannot be broken. Together, we will face the rest. And we'll uncover every secret hidden in this bloodline, no matter how dangerous. The estate seemed to breathe around them. Whispers of the past colliding with the urgency of the present. Anaya's wolf coiled, sensing power and danger in equal measure. Yet anchored by the bond that tied her to Amos. The path forward was uncertain, treacherous, but for the first time, she felt a clarity she had never known. She was no longer a pawn in someone else's game. She was the key, the force, and the protector of her own destiny. And as the moonlight bathed the ruins, Anaya understood the truth she had been seeking all along. The blood that ran in her veins was more than heritage, was power. And power, when wielded with choice and intent, could change everything. Chapter 23. The Breaking Point. The wind tore through the dense forest outside the capital, carrying with it a chill that seemed to seep into the very bones of the land. Anaya stood at the edge of the cliff overlooking the valley, the moonlight spilling over the jagged rocks, casting long, wavering shadows. Below, the Pacus village stretched, fragile and vulnerable, unaware of the storm that was about to strike. Her wolf prowled beneath her skin, coiling and uncoiling like a spring wound to tight. Every instinct screaming that the danger was closer than they thought. Yet it wasn't just the external threats, rogues, dark magic, conspiracies. 'Twas the tension between her and Amos that pulled at her chest like a vice. The bond that had been their lifeline, their strength, now felt like a double-edged blade, cutting deeper with every unspoken word, every flicker of doubt. Amos approached silently, footsteps heavy but controlled. He stopped a few feet away, eyes locked on hers, a storm of emotion swirling behind his calm exterior. Anaya, he said, voice low but firm. You can't carry this alone. Not everything, not everyone is against you. She shook her head, hair whipping around her face in the gusting wind. You don't understand, she snapped, wolf instincts flaring. They're everywhere, Amos. Rogues, traitors, people who were supposed to protect us. Even the bond itself feels like a chain sometimes. He stepped closer, the scent of him grounding her even as the turmoil within her surged. Then let me carry part of it with you, he said. We've survived this far together. We can survive what is coming if we face it side by side. Anaya's jaw tightened. The pull between them was magnetic, undeniable, but the pain of past betrayals, the shadow of every loss she had endured, clawed at her resolve. I can't trust fully, she admitted, her voice breaking just enough to betray her vulnerability. Not after everything. Amos's gaze softened, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he let a flicker of raw emotion slip through his mask of control. I know I've failed before, he said. I know I can't erase the past. But the bond, it is not just a connection. It is a promise, and I will not let you face the darkness alone. Not ever, the wind howled, tugging at their clothes and hair, carrying with it whispers of danger and the scent of rogues lurking in the shadows below. Anaya felt the tension snap inside her like a taut cord. Her wolf erupted, not in aggression, but in a surge of energy that mirrored her conflicted emotions: fear, anger, desire, and the primal urge to protect everything she held dear. Suddenly, a flash of movement, too fast, too precise, cut across the clearing. A rogue had scaled the cliffside, approaching from behind, dagger glinting under the pale moonlight. Anaya reacted before her mind could fully process. Spinning and throwing herself into a defensive stance, Amos was at her side instantly, their combined instincts moving in perfect synchronicity. The rogue lunged, and the clash was immediate: tangle of steel, magic, and raw power. Anaya's wolf coiled, ready to strike, amplifying her strength beyond what she had known she possessed. Every strike she parried, every movement she made, was guided not just by instinct, but by the bond that refused to let them falter. And yet, as the fight raged, a thought pierced through the chaos. What if she failed? What if all the power, all the strength, all the lessons learned were not enough? The rogue's eyes glinted with malicious anticipation, clearly aware of the emotional fracture she carried. They weren't just testing her physical limits. Tika were testing her resolve, her very heart. Imos's voice cut through her spiral. Anna, focus. Trust yourself, trust us. Her body surged with renewed purpose. The rogue's blade came at her again, and this time, she anticipated every movement, countering with a precision that startled even herself. With a final burst of power, wolf and human in seamless harmony, she struck, sending the attacker tumbling down the cliffside, disappearing into the shadows below. Anaya's chest heaved as she dropped to her knees, trembling from exhaustion, adrenaline, and the emotional storm that had accompanied the fight. Amos knelt beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder, grounding her once more. You did it, he whispered, voice low, but heavy with awe and something more intimate, something she had almost forgotten existed: trust. Tears mingled with sweat as Anaya finally exhaled, letting the tension drain. She looked up at Amos, eyes shimmering under the moonlight, and for the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge the truth she had been running from. The bond between them wasn't a chain to bind her. Twill was a lifeline. It demanded surrender, yes, but it also offered strength beyond measure. The wind carried away the echoes of the rogue's threat, leaving only the two of them on the cliff, hearts racing, wolves stirring in silent harmony. And in that moment, Anaya realized that breaking point wasn't about falling, was about finding the courage to rise stronger than before. Together. Chapter 24. Through fire, smoke curled over the horizon like a living thing, the distant blaze painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. The rogue siege had begun in earnest, sweeping through the outskirts of the pack's territory like wildfire. Anaya stood at the forefront, her wolf thrumming beneath her skin, senses on overdrive. Every smell, every flicker of movement, every heartbeat in the chaos was amplified, echoing through her mind like a drumbeat of survival. The village below screamed in panic. Wolves and humans alike scrambled for cover, dodging debris, flames, and the relentless assault of rogue forces. Anaya's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. Every life depended on her now. Every life, including Amos's. He was at her side, unyielding, his presence a tether that kept her grounded even as destruction clawed around them. His eyes, storm-dark, resolute, and fiercely protective, never left her. The bond between them pulsed with electricity, amplifying her instincts, guiding her movements, giving her courage she hadn't known she possessed. Stay close, he ordered, voice cutting through the roar of fire and chaos. We move together. No one gets left behind. Anaya nodded, letting her wolf take over, instincts merging with intent. She shifted seamlessly, muscles coiling and stretching as she sprinted across the uneven terrain, dodging falling timbers and leaping over fiery obstacles. Beside her, Amos moved like a shadow of power and precision, countering threats, shielding the vulnerable, and drawing the rogue attackers toward him with calculated ferocity. A scream tore through the smoke, human, terrified, pleading. Anaya pivoted instantly, sprinting toward the sound, weaving through the chaos with unnatural grace. Her wolf surged within her, senses sharpening to a razor's edge, guiding her through flames and shadows alike. She found a young wolf cub trapped beneath a fallen beam, eyes wide with terror. Its fur singed but alive. Anaya dropped to her knees, pressing her hands against the splintered wood, muscles straining. The bond pulsed, whispering strength, urging her forward. With a final heave, she lifted the beam, freeing the cub and cradling it against her chest. Its trembling heart beat against hers, echoing a primal rhythm that made every nerve in her body hum. Amos appeared beside her, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "Good," he said, voice steady despite the firelight dancing across his face. "We keep moving. Others need us too." Together, they carved a path through the chaos, saving the injured, guiding the terrified, and repelling attackers with precision. Anaya's wolf had fully awakened now, an extension of her will and spirit. She no longer felt fear as a barrier. 'Twas a tool, a signal, a flame that sharpened her focus. Hours seemed to collapse into minutes, the siege relentless. Yet every moment was a testament to their bond. Amos moved like a tempest, Anaya like a wildfire, their energies entwined, complementing each other in perfect balance. And in the heart of the inferno, a realization struck her. Power alone wasn't enough. It was trust, unity, and surrender to the bond that gave them their true strength. Finally, the last of the rogues were driven back, retreating into the shadows from whence they came. Smoke and ash hung heavy in the air, coating everything in a gray haze. The village was scarred, but still standing. And the survivors, wolves and humans alike, looked to Anaya and Amos as beacons amidst the devastation. She collapsed to her knees, exhausted but alive, heart hammering, wolf still thrumming beneath her skin. Amos knelt beside her, brushing ash from her hair, eyes locking onto hers. "You did it?" he murmured, awe and admiration mingling in his voice. "You saved them all." Anaya's breath came in ragged gasps, but for the first time, she allowed herself to exhale fully, to feel the power and responsibility she had been running from. "We did it," she corrected softly, voice trembling yet strong. Together, Amos's hand found hers, fingers intertwining, the bond between them burning brighter than any flame around them. In that moment, the fire of battle and the fire of their bond fused into one undeniable truth: they were stronger together. And no darkness, no rogue, no force of the world could sever what had been forged in blood, trust, and fire. The wind shifted, carrying with it the distant promise of dawn, of hope, and of battles yet to come. Anaya rose, eyes fierce. Wolf and human in harmony, ready to face whatever waited beyond the ashes. Amos followed, steadfast, a king and protector, a mate who would not relinquish what fate had bound him to. Through the fire, they had survived. And through the fire, they had found themselves together. Chapter 25, Secrets in Blood. The air smelled of smoke, blood, and something older, something buried beneath centuries of history, waiting to claw its way back to the surface. Anaya moved cautiously through the ruins of the village, her wolf attuned to the faintest disturbance. Every step carried weight. Every shadow could conceal danger, or worse, truths she was not ready to face. Amos walked beside her, a constant presence, his hand brushing against hers now and then, not for comfort, but as a tether, an unspoken reassurance that she wasn't alone. His eyes scanned the horizon, dark and stormy, reading every flicker, every movement, every threat. The siege might have ended, but the war was far from over. "Look," he said softly, pointing toward the edge of the village, where the remnants of a toppled archive building leaned precariously. Ancient tomes and scrolls had been scattered, their contents spilling secrets into the open. These belonged to the elders, and now we might finally know why they attacked us. Anaya approached cautiously, lifting a charred scroll with trembling fingers. The fire had only partially destroyed it, leaving inked symbols still legible, searing truths into her mind. Her breath hitched as she read, fragments of her family's past revealing themselves like a puzzle long ignored. Her parents, their deaths were not random. They had been marked, targeted because of knowledge they possessed. Knowledge of rogue alliances, forbidden rituals, and pacts conspiring in the shadows. The rogues weren't just attacking out of spite, Tikure had been orchestrating a vendetta for decades. Amos leaned close, his voice low but edged with a tension she hadn't heard before. Anaya, this goes deeper than you realize. Your family has history. It is tied to the very heart of the Rogue's power. That is why they want you. You're not just a target. Tikure the key. The weight of his words pressed against her chest. The bond pulsed, pulling at her heart, intertwining with the revelations she was barely ready to accept. Her wolf stirred, instinct screaming that the threat was still near, yet something deeper, more insidious, demanded her attention. Then I am not just fighting for myself anymore, she whispered, determination sharpening her voice. I'm fighting for everyone. For those who survived, for those who can't, and for him, she added softly, glancing at Amos. His gaze softened for a brief moment, though the storm behind his eyes never fully relented. They sifted through more documents, uncovering maps of packed territories, coded messages, and letters that hinted at betrayals within their own ranks. Each revelation was a dagger, slicing into assumptions and trust, leaving Anaya with more questions than answers. Yet for the first time, she felt clarity in her purpose. Knowledge was power, and she was ready to wield it. A sudden movement caught her attention, a shadow flitting between the ruins. Her wolf growled low, a warning resonating through her bones. Amos tightened his grip on her hand, eyes narrowing, muscles coiled to strike. They moved as one, instincts synced, approaching the figure silently. It was an elder, a survivor who had hidden during the chaos. His eyes were wild, fear and desperation etched deep into his features. You shouldn't be here, he rasped, voice quivering. They're watching. They know you've even covered the truth. Anaya felt the pull of danger, but also a surge of purpose. Then we make sure they regret it, she said firmly. No more running. No more hiding. Amos's hand brushed her shoulder, a grounding force. We do this together. Whatever it takes, the elder nodded, handing them a sealed letter. This contains the final piece. The secret that ties your blood to theirs, protect it or all of you, will fall. Anaya clutched the letter to her chest, the bond with Amos thundering in response. The fire of the siege still lingered around them, but a new fire ignited within, fire of revelation, of vengeance, of unyielding purpose. She had faced death, survived chaos, and now, armed with truth, she would confront the shadows lurking in every corner of their world. Together, Anaya and Amos stepped from the ruins, eyes scanning the horizon, hearts bound by destiny and determination. The road ahead was perilous, riddled with enemies, betrayals, and impossible choices, but they were no longer just survivors. They were warriors, bonded not only by fate, but by the unwavering resolve to claim the future that had been denied to them. The wind whispered through the charred remains of the village, carrying with it the scent of ash blood, and something far more potent, power waiting to be claimed, secrets demanding justice, and a bond that would not be broken. Anaya looked at Amos, eyes fierce, wolf and human in perfect harmony. We fight, she said, voice steady. And we finish what they started, Amos nodded, his grip tightening on hers. Together, he confirmed. And together. They vanished into the shadows, prepared to face the darkness that awaited them, ready to confront the secrets in blood. Chapter 20:6. The breaking point. Night fell like a heavy curtain over the valley, blanketing the forest in inky blackness. The moon hung low, a pale sentinel, casting silver light through the skeletal branches of twisted trees. Anaya's senses sharpened, her wolf attuned to every rustle, every snap of twig beneath invisible paws. Danger was close, closer than she had ever felt. Jersey could taste it in the air, bitter and electric, mingling with the scent of her own fear. Amos moved beside her silently, his presence a steady, unyielding force. Each step he took resonated with controlled tension, the predator in him alert to every anomaly. The bond pulsed between them, fierce and relentless, tugging at her heart with the weight of 1,000 unspoken emotions. She wanted to resist, wanted to run. But the truth of the connection was undeniable. Their fates were intertwined, and tonight would test the strength of that tie. A sudden scream split the silence, sharp and desperate, echoing through the trees. Anaya froze, instincts screaming at her to run, yet her wolf surged forward, compelling her toward the source. Amos's hand gripped hers tightly. "Stay with me," he commanded, voice low but unwavering. They burst into a clearing where the remnants of rogue forces had gathered. Shadows moving like phantoms in the silvered moonlight. The rogues' eyes glimmered with malice, their weapons drawn. But none of them expected the unrelenting bond that now bound Anaya and Amos together. The world seemed to narrow, the chaos of the attack fading into a tunnel of purpose. Anaya's breath came in sharp bursts, the weight of the revelations from the village pressing on her mind. Every secret uncovered, every betrayal exposed, had led to this moment. Her wolf roared from deep within, a primal force awakening, responding not just to danger, but to the surge of power coursing through her veins. Amos stepped ahead, placing himself between her and the advancing threat. His eyes, dark and stormy, locked on hers. "We face this together." "No hesitation," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made her blood hum. The first rogue lunged, but Anaya was ready. Her reflexes were honed, sharp as steel. She moved like liquid shadow, her claws finding their mark. Striking with precision she hadn't known she possessed, the battle was a blur of movement, silver light flashing on blades, fur shimmering as wolves shifted in and out of human form, the air thick with the tang of blood and sweat. Amos fought beside her, lethal and exacting. Every swing of his arm, every calculated movement, was both protection and assertion of his bond. He didn't just fight for survival, he fought to claim her, to prove that the rejection of the past could not sever what destiny had forged. Yet even amidst the chaos, doubt gnawed at Anaya. The bond throbbed between them, demanding surrender, yet her heart clung to fear, to memory, to the lingering pain of betrayal and rejection. Could she trust it? Could she trust him? A rogue appeared at her flank, dagger aimed for her side. Amos reacted instantly, shoving her out of the way, taking the blade to his shoulder. He grunted but did not falter. The bond flared violently at the sight of his injury, radiating anguish and desperation. And Anaya felt it like a physical blow to her chest. Her wolf screamed. The pain, the urgency, the connection to cure were impossible to ignore. Every instinct screamed to claim him, to fight not just for her life but for his. Anaya surged forward, overwhelming the rogue with a force she hadn't yet realized she possessed, her claws sinking deep, ending the threat with a shuddering finality. Amos stumbled but caught himself, breathing ragged, his hand reaching for hers. Their eyes met, dark, stormy, and unyielding. In that instant, the world around them vanished. The bond pulsed with unbearable intensity, forcing every hidden thought, every buried desire, to the surface. "You're mine," Amos growled softly, the words more than possessive, to cure were a promise, a plea, a declaration carved into the marrow of their shared fate. Anaya's chest heaved. Her wolf surged, wild and untamed, finally merging with the truth she had resisted for so long. "And I can't run from it anymore," she whispered, voice breaking under the weight of revelation. The clearing was silent for a heartbeat, the rogues scattered or vanquished. But the moment stretched beyond time. The bond throbbed between them, intense and unrelenting, demanding recognition, demanding unity. Annie realized that rejection had been a shield, a way to protect herself. But it could not stand against destiny. The threads of fear, guilt, and past betrayals were unspooled, replaced by raw, undeniable connection. Amos reached for her fully, pulling her into his chest, the heat of his body grounding her. "You don't have to fight alone," he murmured, voice low, vibrating with the resonance of their bond. "Not ever again." Anaya pressed against him, wolf and human merging, heart and soul trembling as the bond settled. Fierce and permanent. The pain of the past, the chaos of the present, Tignate were nothing compared to the force that now tethered them together. Above, the moon cast a silver halo, a silent witness to their awakening. Shadows shifted, threats lingered. But within that small circle of light and fate, Anaya and Amos found a fragile, blazing truth. They were stronger together, unstoppable when united, and ready to confront the darkness that still waited for them. The breaking point had been reached. And they had survived it, not just with their lives, but with the bond between them ignited beyond anything either could have imagined. Chapter 27. Through fire flames licked the edges of the forest, casting eerie shadows across the night. Smoke curled upward, heavy and choking, carrying with it the scent of ash and fear. Anaia's lungs burned as she pushed through the haze, the roar of crackling fire blending with the distant howls of wolves and the shouts of those trapped in the chaos. Every sense screamed danger, every nerve demanded action. Amos was beside her, a solid wall of strength, eyes scanning. Instincts razor sharp. His hand gripped hers with iron certainty, grounding her as the fire's heat pressed closer. The bond pulsed violently, sending waves of energy through Anaia's body. Fear was there, yes, but so was power. So was determination. So was the undeniable truth. Together, they could survive this inferno. Rogue forces had set fire to the outer borders of the valley, trying to trap the Paki, trying to force surrender. But Anaia could feel her wolf stirring, raw and unrelenting. She had trained, fought, and bled for this moment. And now every lesson crystallized into action. Ahead, a group of rogues cornered a young wolf, their shadows dancing in the firelight, weapons raised. Anaia didn't hesitate. With a growl that rolled from deep within, her claws tore through the smoke, striking with precision. The first rogue went down, surprised by the sudden ferocity. And the others faltered just long enough for Amos to intervene, his own strength decisive and unyielding. Together, they moved as one, a predator and mate, wolf and wolf, bond and blood. The fire around them became a battlefield. The air thick with ash heat, and tension. Anaia could hear the bond's pulse in her veins. A steady drumbeat of assurance and command. Every attack she made, every movement, was amplified by Amos's presence. Their connection giving them strength beyond the ordinary. A rogue leaped from the shadows, dagger poised to strike. Amos reacted instantly, throwing himself between Anaia and the threat. The dagger grazed his arm, drawing blood. But he didn't falter. The bond flared at the touch of pain, a wave of anguish and rage washing over Anaia. Her wolf howled, a sound raw and untamed, as she struck with a force that sent the attacker sprawling into the flames. They didn't pause. Fire and enemy alike surrounded them, yet the world had narrowed to the circle of their connection. Every threat was met, every danger anticipated, because they were no longer alone. Tiknun were fused in purpose, in will, in soul. Anaia's chest heaved, sweat and smoke coating her skin. She felt the heat of the flames on her back, the sharp sting of ash in her eyes, but she also felt something deeper. Clarity. The fear that had gripped her for years. The lingering shadow of rejection, the uncertainty of power. Tiknarl melted away under the intensity of the bond. She was more than survivor. She was force incarnate, tethered to Amos by threads of destiny she could finally embrace. Amos's gaze met hers across the haze, storm-dark eyes softened by trust and unspoken love. "We hold together," he growled. Low, vibrating with the resonance of the bond. "No matter what falls around us," Anaia nodded, her wolf's urging. Her strength magnified by the trust, by the connection, by the fire of their shared destiny. They fought side by side, every motion in perfect synchrony, cutting a path through the chaos that had seemed insurmountable just hours ago. Finally, they reached the heart of the fire, where the rogue commander had made his last stand. The man sneered, dagger raised. But Anaia's claws and Amos's strength were relentless. Together, they struck, a whirlwind of coordinated fury. And the threat collapsed beneath their combined might. The flames still roared, consuming the outer edges of the forest. But Anaia and Amos emerged from the inferno unbroken, their bond blazing brighter than the fire around them. They were scorched, exhausted, hearts pounding, but alive. Anaia's gaze lifted to the night sky, where the moon now shone fully, pale and unwavering. The fire had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but they had emerged not just unbroken, but transformed. She felt the pulse of her wolf, the echo of her mate, the undeniable truth of their shared strength. Amos pulled her close, the heat of his body a shield against the cold that always followed chaos. "You were magnificent," he murmured, voice husky. Never doubt the power you carry, Anaya stood against him. Sweat and ash coating her skin, but a fierce glow in her eyes. Neither will you, she replied softly. We're in this together, now. Always. Above, the flames crackled, but the bond between them was stronger than fire. Stronger than fear. They had survived the trial, and though shadows still lurked, they faced the future side by side. Ready to confront whatever darkness awaited. In the heart of the inferno, Anaya realized, survival wasn't enough. With Amos. With the bond, she could thrive, could fight, could claim her destiny. And the fire had proven it. Chapter 28. Bound by Ashes. The battlefield was quiet now, but the silence was deceptive. Smoke lingered in the air, drifting over the scorched earth and shattered trees, carrying the faint metallic tang of blood. Every nerve in Anaya's body hummed with tension, her senses sharpened by the bond, alert to the slightest movement. The rogues had been pushed back, but the danger was far from over. Amos stood beside her, his form solid and unwavering. A shield against the unknown. His eyes, usually sharp and commanding, held a flicker of vulnerability now, acknowledgement that the cost of this battle had been steep, yet even in exhaustion. In the aftermath of fire and blood, there was certainty in his presence. They had survived together. Anaya's gaze swept over the remnants of the fight. Bodies lay where they had fallen, both rogue and pack. The forest itself scarred by chaos. And somewhere in the haze, the whispers of the pack carried a mixture of awe and fear. They had seen her strength, her wolfish emergence, the fire she had walked through. But the true trial was only beginning. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, imposing, cloaked in authority and menace. The mastermind behind the rogue attacks had been revealed, a former counselor, exiled but not forgotten. His vendetta sharpened over years of resentment. His eyes met Anaya's, calculating, predatory. You, she breathed. Claws flexing instinctively, wolf rising beneath her skin. It ends tonight. Amos stepped forward. His own wolf snarling low in his throat. Back her, he commanded to the pack. His voice carrying authority that brooked no argument. She's not alone. The final confrontation was swift and brutal. The counselor lunged, knife flashing, but Anaya moved with unerring precision, every step guided by the bond. Every strike amplified by trust and shared power. Amos was a storm beside her, intercepting, protecting, countering. Together, they were unstoppable, a fusion of fire and instinct, wolf and mate, destiny and choice. The counselor fell. Unyielding ambition crushed beneath the force of their combined will. Silence fell again, but this time, it was real, weighted not with fear, but with the aftermath of triumph. Anaya's chest heaved, her wolfish heartbeat echoing the rhythm of victory. Amos reached for her, fingers brushing ash-streaked hair from her face. Eyes soft with unspoken emotion. You claimed it, he murmured, voice low, resonant. You claimed yourself. And this bond, Anaya let out a long, shuddering breath. We claimed it, she corrected. The bond pulsed between them. A living entity of its own, affirming the truth they had both feared and longed for. The pack began to gather. Their expressions a mixture of reverence and relief. The rogues were defeated, the mastermind revealed. And the threat that had shadowed their lives lifted, for now, yet Anaya knew that power came with responsibility. She had discovered her strength, embraced her wolf, and faced the darkness within herself and around her. Nothing could ever reduce her to the fear and isolation of before. Amos pulled her into a fierce embrace, grounding her. Steadying her. You're mine, he whispered, a vow not of possession, but of unwavering unity. And I'm yours. For the first time, Anaya did not fear the depth of the bond. She let it flow through her. Let it anchor her, let it define her. The pain, the rejection, the trials, Teen had all led to this moment. Standing amidst the ashes, she felt the full scope of her power and her choice. We rise from the ashes, she whispered back. Voice steady, wolf and human fused as one. Together, and in that moment. With the moon high above, and the night silent, but for the distant call of wolves, Anaya and Amos stood not just as survivors, but as the embodiment of a bond forged through fire, struggle, an unyielding truth. Their story was no longer one of rejection or fear. It was a story of power, love, and the unbreakable will of those destined to find each other. The forest around them shimmered with the remnants of battle. But within that glow, two wolves, mates, bonded, unshakable, looked toward the horizon, ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 20 Chas 9. The Mate's Vow. The dawn broke slowly over the forest, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and gold. Smoke from the night's battle still lingered, curling in ghostly tendrils across the treetops. Anea stood at the edge of the clearing, wolf and human intertwined. Senses stretched to the limit. Every sound, every scent, every pulse of movement in the pack was magnified. Amos approached. Footsteps silent but deliberate. His presence was a tether, grounding her even as adrenaline and the lingering echoes of danger thrummed through her veins. His eyes, dark and unwavering, held the weight of all the battles fought, all the rejections endured, all the choices made. "You're awake, Curly," he murmured, voice low, carrying both relief and attention that hadn't left him since the first rogue attack. "I couldn't sleep," Anea admitted, her gaze sweeping the clearing where her pack gathered, still tense but alive. Too much unfinished. Too many questions about what comes next. Amos nodded, silent for a heartbeat before kneeling to meet her gaze. "Then let me answer one of them. Right here, right now." His hand found hers, their fingers lacing instinctively. Wolf to wolf, human to human. Anea felt the bond surge, pulsing beneath her skin like molten fire, affirming every heartbeat, every breath. She had resisted it for so long, feared it, hated it, questioned it, but now, in the quiet aftermath of chaos, it felt like an anchor. A promise. "I vow," Amos began, voice steady and resolute, "to stand with you, not above you. To protect you, not because you need saving, but because we are stronger together. I vow to honor your power, your choice." And the wolf that has waited for this moment as much as I have, Anea's chest tightened, emotions colliding like storm clouds. She had been rejected, hunted, feared, and scorned. She had carried the weight of her own survival. Now, here, she realized she was not alone. "And I vow," she replied, voice trembling yet firm, "to trust in what we are, to wield my strength not in fear, but in purpose. To stand with you. For the PK and for the life we are building together." The bond flared between them, a living thread of light and heat that wrapped around their hearts, knitting together pain, longing, and triumph. Wolves around them paused, sensing the shift in power, the balance restored, the mate bond fulfilled. Amos drew her close, forehead to forehead, eyes locked. "No matter what comes, Anea, we face it as one. You and I, always," Anea nodded, letting herself surrender, not to weakness, but to the unyielding force of their connection. The darkness, the threats, the betrayals, weakness were behind them. Ahead lay choice, strength, and the untamed promise of love forged in fire. From the treetops, a lone howl echoed, a wolf's cry, mournful yet proud, answered in kind by the pack. The sound carried over the clearing, a song of survival, unity, and destiny fulfilled. Anea and Amos lifted their heads in unison, letting the bond resonate outward, affirming their place as mates, as warriors, as leaders. The sun's first rays touched the forest floor, casting long shadows that intertwined with light. Anea felt the wolf within her stretch, powerful and alive, its strength hers to command. Amos's hand tightened over hers. A promise made and sealed in both human and wolf, in heart and soul. "Together," she whispered, letting the word carry across the forest. "Always," he answered. And in that single moment, amidst the ashes of their trials and the echoes of battles won, the two mates, bonded, unbroken, and undeniable, stepped forward into a future of their own making. No longer hunted, no longer rejected, no longer afraid. Anea Ross had survived the darkness, claimed her power, and found the love she had chosen. In doing so, she had become whole. The forest, the Pache, and the rising sun bore witness to the birth of a legend. A mate's vow that could not be broken, a bond that could not be denied. and a woman who had finally found her place, not in the shadows, but in the light.